justice for all.
Amen.
Good evening. Nice to see so many people out tonight. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Kate Vivian, who passed away last Saturday. Kate was a resident in Narragansett. She had worked for New York Magazine, Rhode Island School of Design, Planned Parenthood of Rhode Island, Applied Science Associates, and Newport Historical Society. She moved to Narragansett in 1965 and was hired as the Towers Coordinator on October 23, 1998, completing 19 years of work for the town of Narragansett. She was enthusiastic about the towers and was thrilled to see the restoration being completed over the years. She enjoyed the towers being used for a variety of events. Matter of fact, last June, Kate and her husband got married there. She leaves her 2 daughters, Sarah and Molly. Kate was loved by many and will be remembered for her love for the towers and the joy that it brought to so many other people when they enjoyed that amazing place. So I'd like to take a moment of silence for Kate Vivian. Thank you. First order of business is approval of the minutes. September 5th, 2017, executive session minutes.
Move to approve the executive session minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. September 18th, 2017, the regular minutes for the meeting.
So move.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Next, we have a motion to appoint the town solicitor. Do I have a motion?
I move to appoint Mark Davis.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Mark, can you come to the podium? Good, stand right. Put your hand up, right. I. State your name.
Mark Davis,
Do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will be true and faithful
that I will be true and faithful
unto the state
unto this day,
and support the laws and constitution thereof
support the laws and constitutions thereof,
and the laws and the Constitution of the United States,
and the laws and the Constitution of the United States,
the Narragansett Town Charter and ordinances,
the Narragansett Town Charter and ordinances,
and that I will well and truly execute the office
and I will well and truly execute the office
of Town Solicitor
of Town Solicitor
for the term which I have been appointed,
for the term for which I have been appointed,
or until another be engaged in my place,
or until another be engaged in my place,
or until I am legally discharged therefrom, so help me God.
or until I'm legally discharged therefrom,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to say anything, Mark? All right, welcome aboard. Next, we have open forum. When you come up to the mic, if you state your name and address, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please don't speak on any motions that are on the agenda tonight. So, anybody for open forum this evening? Come on up, Paul. Waiting for my timer, so hold on one second. State your name and address, please.
Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Wynwood Circle in Narragansett. The Narragansett Town Code of Ordinances, Section 2-36, pertaining to regular meetings. The Town Council shall hold its regular monthly meetings on the first and third Mondays of each month at 7:30 p.m. at the Town Hall, 25 Fifth Avenue, without any special notice to any member of the Town Council. So, I would like to know under what authority we move the meeting here to tonight. Clearly, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know if it violates the Code of Ordinances. I'm going to leave that to somebody else. But it certainly violates the spirit of it, and it violates the town norms that we have this televised on TV, live, when it's going on. And it just makes me wonder why we're making this exception right now. It appears to accommodate the library. I think it sets a bad precedent because any politically strong meeting we could move. And there's really no authority to do this, and it's terribly disappointing that instead of spending the energy to move the meeting, more leadership wasn't spent to try and bring people together rather than get hundreds of people to essentially pressure the town council tonight.
No, I'm going to just respond briefly because I just want the public to know, when the motion was put on a couple of months ago, the chamber was so full, and there were so many people that were interested, and so I wanted to make sure that everybody and anybody that wanted to speak on anything on the agenda, and particularly that was the library motion, that we had the opportunity where they could safely fit and be comfortable, and everybody would be heard, not one in, one out, but that people had the opportunity. Thank you. The charter does say shall, doesn't say must, and as the president, you do have the authority to hold a special meeting. So I consider this a special meeting tonight. We did a variety of things to advertise. We, had it on the website. I announced it at the meeting. So I hope that everybody knows that the leadership was about letting the voice of the people be heard. So we're going to move on the agenda. Anybody else for open forum?
Good evening. Philip Cody, 109 Westmoreland Street, Narragansett. I want to make two brief comments.
You can lift it up, Phil, I think. Yeah, there you go.
I'd like to make two brief comments, neither about any of the topics being discussed. The first is a civics comment, and the next will be a public health announcement. In terms of civics, there are a lot of people in this world who do not have the opportunity to vote. They can't control their own destiny. They live in a different kind of place than we do. We in this country are blessed. We have the ability to vote. There are a couple of hot topics tonight. I urge everybody in this room to be attentive and polite. I urge everyone to listen to both sides of all arguments. And if you walk out happy with the way the vote turned out, God bless you. If you're not happy, guess what? In 13 months, there's another election. Hold our elected officials responsible for their actions. They answer to us, the people. Second, public health. We have flu season coming up, particularly bad this year, starting in January, going through probably mid-May. Talk to your docs about getting immunized. Talk to your kids' pediatrician about getting them immunized. CVS has immunization program, and I believe the library has an immunization program this Wednesday from 11 to 1 o'clock. Thank you. And Rite Aid.
Thank you, Phil. Anybody else wishing to speak?
I'd like to say something.
Karen?
I can say something. I'm part of the public. I'm gonna check.
Karen Shabshutowitz. First of all, it's very appropriate when you can't fit an interested citizen crowd into a small chamber to move it, and it's not the first time. Back in 1993, when the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Ed came into Narragansett, they did move it over to the high school because there was such a crowd that wanted to attend, and it shouldn't be standing room capacity only and pose a fire hazard. We need to accommodate interested citizens, so that it's a shame that people want to limit public participation. Secondly, I'd like to address the lack of public transportation in Narragansett. It's a drastic problem. It's not only for seniors, it's also for URI students. You almost have to have a car to live in Narragansett anymore. And I think it's terrible, and it's going to be, if we're increasing the number of seniors that are coming to town, I don't understand why the state legislators that are supposed to be representing us in the town council isn't prioritizing the lack of public transportation. Everyone's always complaining about parking and traffic. We should be doing whatever we can to alleviate this and encourage people to take public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else wishing to speak at open forum? Seeing none?
I just want to point out, we have 2 scouts here coming at the meeting, working on a merit badge. Is Scout Gould and Scout Chernick. Why don't you guys stand up and get a round of applause.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Susan, one thing I just wanted to add to it, it's great that we have a group that is very interested in it. The one thing that I wish we could have accomplished to be more fair to the entire town of Narragansett is to have this be live, because there is a very, very large population that does watch this on TV live. So although it's great that Susan and you work together to be able to be here so that we could hear you, that's wonderful. But just know, for going forward, that I believe that we need to work toward a different solution, because it does limit the amount of people that are here. One person said to me today, and I think it's a great statement, once the Super Bowl has been played, nobody's going to watch the rerun. So no one's going to watch tomorrow and find out what was said here tonight. They're going to find out the vote, and that's going to be it.
I think it's running live on the website tonight.
If they knew about it, but that was not actually publicized
Facebook,
on
yeah.
Facebook until yesterday afternoon. So again, I think that we cater to a small population, and I think that's unfortunate. We need to cater to the entire town.
Maybe we should build a new town hall.
Okay, moving to...
I actually have something to say on this as well. Regardless of what the ordinances say or the charter, our regular meetings should be held the first and third Monday at the town hall. We don't want to be in a situation, I know in the past, Karen mentioned a time that happened many years ago, but there's a provision for special meetings in which a special meeting can be called for a singular purpose, and we could go to the Ryan Center and anywhere we wanted to go that could fit thousands. But I just think that the meeting should be held the first and third Monday in town hall, and for openness and consistency purposes.
Thank you. I need a motion to open the public hearing
So move.
for the renewal of the liquor license. Excuse me? It's not 8 o'clock. Oh, okay, then we'll move on. Let's go to consent agenda. Do I have any council members that like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, the consent agenda passes. We'll go to new business. We can go to motion 10.
Time's up.
A motion to approve change order number 1 for additional construction services for the Medituxet Neighborhood Stormwater BMP Improvements 2017 to increase the scope of the road construction and paving of Carty Corporation in the amount of $179,550.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. We have to wait until 8 o'clock for the public hearing, so I'm just going to move on to, we're done with the entire agenda until 8 o'clock, and then we'll open the public hearing at that time. So we have 15 minutes, so I'll call a break. You can stretch, get a cold drink, and we'll come back in about 15 minutes for the public hearing. Yeah, because it's a light agenda, but heavy at the same time.
This, you mean? No. What are you looking for, 9?
Yeah, in order for them to hear us, we're going to speak really close to the mic, he was saying. 2 minutes.
No, I didn't touch it.
1 minute. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
Madam President, can we move item 9, the library, up ahead of everything else?
Do we have a second for that?
Or I should move to
Second.
move item 9 up in front of everything else?
Do we have a motion to move item 9 up?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are we going to
Aye.
limit the amount of, the historic people are here as well, and I mean, some of them have attorneys that they're paying for to be here, so are we going to limit the amount of public's?
So we're in the middle of voting if we're going to move it up. So all
I
those
know,
in favor?
that's a question I'm
Yeah,
asking.
well,
Okay.
I'll answer that. All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
4-1, motion passes. I'm going to suspend the historic public hearing. We're going to move to number 9. I'll read number 9, and then we'll come back to it at the end. So a motion,
So you're not going to answer the question, Susan, how long this is going to be? Because I know some of the people here do have attorneys they're paying for to be here.
so I just moved it up. We just voted to move up number 9, and then we'll do the historic districts for the public hearing.
So you're not going to answer the question. Understood.
Thank you. Okay, motion 9, a motion to approve the purchase of the building, land, and associated limited common elements of the former Belmont Marketplace from GP Peer Realty LLC for the sum of $2.4 million. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of opening the motion? Aye.
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 4-1, motion passes. The motion's open on the floor, and I'm going to defer to the town manager. If he could give us some background on the Belmont Marketplace.
Thank you, Madam President. I will be referring to the library fact sheet that you have with the agenda item attached. This sheet here is a 1.5-page sheet that will go over the facts as they stand, so that I know there's some questions on things and misinformation, but, so this is, there's one item I will correct, one number that is incorrect, and I will correct it when I come to it. So, referring to the library fact sheet, number 1, the negotiated purchase price. As it stands today, the negotiated purchase price with the Gilbane Company is $2.4 million. The number we were working off from when I became the town manager was $2.5 million. I understand it was as high as 2.7 years ago, but it was $2.5 million that was the number I worked off. I dealt directly with Mr. Bob Gilbane, Mr. Bob Gagliardi, representing the Gilbane Company in my office, and the price that Mr. Gilbane offered was $2.4 million. This included the building, the old Belmont Marketplace, we always refer to it as, 86% ownership, the land underneath, and 59 parking places. That number 59 came up because that was the number, the minimum number that OLIS recommended that the town would need to purchase or build an 18,500 square foot library. It also would include the limited common element to Caswell Street. If there are any questions on the technical items here, I'll defer those to Mr. Steve Marcello, who's the Assistant Town Solicitor who specializes in this. If you look at number 2, the appraised values, there were 2 appraisals completed for the old Belmont building. If you look at A, Andolfo Appraisal Associates, Inc., that is the one where I'll make the correction, and I apologize for the incorrect number. If you look on line 2, it should state $2,050,000, not $2,050,000. $2,050,000. That appraisal was conducted by the library board at their expense in January 2017, and the appraised value of $2,050,000 came back, but it did not reflect the 59 parking spots that we had requested. In speaking with the tax assessor, the approximate value placed on the parking spots of the 59 spots was $150,000. So if we use that number, it would be approximately $2.2 million as that appraisal. The Gilbane Company had another appraisal done by Peter M. Scotti and Associates in April of 2017 with the appraised value of $2,450,000, which included the 59 parking spots. Let's move to item 3, the assessed value. The assessed value by the town is approximately $1.8 million. The reason we use the word approximately is because we had to back out the Belmont building from the total appraised value of the 3 parcels that are included in that complex. It's broken down here by the tax assessor. The 3 properties, if you look at 3A, Roman numeral 1, it's the Trio parcel where the assessed value was $2,368,600. 2, the Market Shops parcel, assessed value at $3.7 million, $88,500. 3, the vacant held for development parcel, assessed value of $638,200. The total value of that entire marketplace was $6,795,300. If we backed out the Belmont marketplace and it was purchased, the loss of revenue by the town of Narragansett would be approximately $26,000 in tax revenue. If you look at 4, common area maintenance fees. Initially, and this figure's not on the sheet, the initial common area maintenance fee that was proposed by the Gilbane Company was $70,000. Further negotiations reduced that substantially to $50,000, or $2.71 per square foot. That was for an 18,459 square feet of building space. Let's move down to 5, comparison of the CAM fees versus the town cost for maintenance. In A, the cost of the CAM fees, common area maintenance fees, paid to the Gilbane Company, because that would be a condo, would be $50,026 approximately. That would include $18,090 in a condo reserve fund. So if you back that out, it comes down to about $31,934. But also included in that so we're comparing apples to apples. In the $31,934 amount, there was approximately $5,900, $6,000 will round up in common electrical fees. So if you take that number out, it comes out to approximately $26,000 is the true CAM fee if we're going to compare what the town would if we had to maintain it ourselves, which is B, the cost of the new library, if the town maintained it. I got this estimate from the Department of Public Works, our facilities manager, and he gave us a rough estimate of what, if the town maintained this building ourselves, if we owned it outright, what would it cost? So those 2 fees are very similar. What is the cost, C, what is the cost for the current library maintenance? $7,473. Let's go to the second page, 6, debt service. On a $5.8 million debt service, approximately $500,000 will be paid by the town, of which it could either be $200,000 to $250,000, which is reimbursed by OLIS. OLIS is the Office of Library Informational Services. That brings us to 7, the OLIS reimbursement. We met with representatives of OLIS and tried to determine what the town could possibly get reimbursed and the amount that we would be reimbursed. The amount they gave us is the most realistic amount would be 40% of the total cost of the library. So if you took the 40% of the $5.8 million and come out to approximately $2.3 million reimbursement, that's where we got the $200,000 that would come back to the town per year reimbursement by the state of Rhode Island. So you don't get that money all up front, you get it per year over 20 years. But there was discussion that if this was done in the right way, it's possible we could have gone up to 50% reimbursement, maximum, for reimbursement by the state from OLIS. That would amount to a $2.9 million amount that we would get reimbursed over 20 years. The effect on the tax rate, I'll go back to 6A, the effect on the tax rate is 11 cents per thousand. That's all I have on the fact sheet, Madam President. I would defer to Mr. Marcella at this point.
Thank you.
I have a question. The OLIS reimbursement, wasn't that on the lowest value? They looked at the assessed value and the market value and the appraised value. Wasn't the OLA supposed to be on the lowest, which is the assessed value is 1.8?
That's correct. That's a good point.
So wouldn't this number here be different?
Well, so that's the fuzzy math that we tried to come up with the numbers. So you are correct.
Okay.
It's either you would be, on the building itself, OLS would reimburse you
Right.
on the lowest amount, the 1.8 million assessed value, the purchase price, or, but,
Talking a difference of $500,000 or $250,000 over 20 years.
that's correct.
Okay, all right, I just want to make that point clear.
But-
Thank
but-
you.
Okay.
Steve?
Thanks. So if you look at the other sheet that's attached, the first paragraph is regard to the proposal. That's what the town manager just went over, with the exception of...
Steve, could you speak up just a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
With the exception of the parking spaces in the driveway corridor. The proposal that's before the town is a condominium type proposal where the parking spaces would be considered a limited common element along with the driveway corridor down to Caswell Street. I know there's going to be some questions later on that, but I'll just move forward. If the council were to vote in favor of moving forward with this proposal, it would move forward as a normal, standard commercial acquisition. The town would have to enter into a formal purchase and sale agreement with Gilbane Properties. The town would obviously have the right to do all normal customary inspections, including any environmental inspections, any title exams, and more importantly, probably any physical, mechanical, or structural inspections on the building. I don't know when the last time the town has been in there, so if the motion was approved, the sale would go forward. However, it would be subject to, again, the normal, customary commercial inspections. In addition, because of the type of ownership that's being proposed, the condo documents have not been drafted yet. Those would have to be drafted, reviewed by both Attorney Mark Davis, myself, and any other independent person that the town might feel might be beneficial in reviewing the documents. I don't anticipate, should the council vote to move forward, I don't anticipate the condo documents being of any special problem in the fact that normally they'll just outline the normal condo ownership within the plaza and within the building. The kind of the more unique portion of this transaction would be that they're proposing a subcondominium for the Belmont building. That subcondominium would consist of the 86% ownership interest that's being proposed, along with the 14% ownership interest that's now designated as Pier Liquors. That subcondominium would be their own mini condominium association, and they would control essentially the maintenance within the building structure. The large condominium, which would be the Trios building, the other three buildings in this would be, the town would have approximately about a 30% interest in that large condominium. I'll call it the Plaza condominium, but an 86% interest in the building condominium. That would give the town control over, I'll call it the maintenance of the building, but not control over the overall shopping plaza. In addition, if you look at number 6B, the Gilbane Company has offered essentially a one-time option should the liquor store terminate their lease or the lease end for whatever reason. So it's my understanding that there is currently 2 years remaining on that lease with a 5-year option. Should that business either not renew their lease or not renew their option, the town would have a right to purchase the remaining 14% interest in the building, which again is the liquor store portion of the building. And the value of that purchase would be determined by essentially the town getting appraisal, Gilbane getting an appraisal, and if the values were a certain percentage apart from each other, a third independent appraiser. So that's how later on down the road, should the town wish to move forward to purchase that remaining 14%, that's how the value of that purchase would be determined. That's pretty much it for the proposal.
Just want to expand on something here. In the motion, it says the land. Can you explain exactly what the land
Sure.
entails? It does not include the parking, correct?
In the simplest manner, the land is the footprint on which the building is built.
Correct.
So there is such a thing as a land condominium. If you think about it, if you remove the building, there would be an ownership in a fee simple ownership in the land beneath that.
Minus 14%.
Minus 14% for the liquor store portion. So it would be an 86% in that building footprint. The parking area would be a limited common element. Now, generally, what a limited common element is, it's a portion of a condominium that's outside of your building envelope, but yet you have essentially control over. The simplest way I explain this to clients is a patio or a deck outside of a condominium. It would work the same way, and there are actually many residential condominiums that you also get assigned or parking spaces as a limited common element. In this case, since it's not just a single spot, it's 59 spots. The beauty to this is that initially the town needed 62 spots in order to avoid going to, in our initial proposals, in order to have to get some zoning or planning variances. Because it is a condominium type of ownership, under our regulations, you can actually use the other spots. Although those spots are not limited common elements to the library, they would be common elements to the entire shopping plaza.
Do we have, in the packet, the diagram is here, do we have it to pop on this big, beautiful screen behind us? No? It would be so helpful for everybody here.
Thank you, Steve. I'll bring it back to the council. I'm going to hold my comments until the end. Does anybody on the council want to speak to the project before I go to the public?
Yeah, so I just have, I want to be clear. So the $5.8 million bond that was approved was up to $5.8 million, right? So it's not 5.8 million is, so the reimbursement could be a portion thereof, something less, number one. Number two, the negotiation, if this motion passes, we potentially then enter into a negotiation with a purchase and sales agreement.
Correct. Subject to, the purchase price, the inspections, those are all, we couldn't go back and say, hey, we want 90 days to inspect.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So to be clear with the public, I want the public to understand that if this passes, there's still another giant step forward that has to be
correct.
addressed.
And as a transactional attorney, the giant step is usually not the entering into the purchase and sale agreement. Frankly, it's the title searches, it's the physical, mechanical, structural, environmental issues that usually are the pitfalls on a commercial transaction later on after the purchase.
So in the spirit of this motion, if it is approved, we're moving forward with the purchase of this building subject to any of these, potential conditions that, if the building is falling apart, which I don't think it is, then we could simply say,
correct,
thanks, but no thanks.
Or if they do an phase one environmental and, there was some environmental issue, which I don't anticipate at this type of site, but the town would have the right to get out of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council?
Yes. Sorry. Okay, I just want to, I know we had the bond issue.
Patrick, speak closer to the mic.
Can you hear me?
They can.
Okay. We had the bond issue November 2016. I just want to make sure what we're everybody understands exactly what we're buying here. We're not buying a building with parking spaces. We're buying a condo. And the best description of a condo is from the interior skin of the subject property inward. We don't own the outside of the building. We don't own the common areas. We don't own the parking lot. Now, this is a little unusual because we do own the land that's directly beneath the footprint of the building. That was the way to get the OLS reimbursement, correct? Because we,
Correct. The
Correct.
initial proposal that before I was appointed had to do with the leased land.
Correct.
And if
Yep.
if the town moved forward with a leased land proposal, OLS would not reimburse because the land would not be owned by the town.
and OLS is only going to reimburse us for the lowest value determined, which is closer to 1.8 than the 2.3 to 2.9. So I just want to let you know what the numbers on the worst case could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I'd like to hear from the public. If anybody wishes to speak, please come up, state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Gloria? And I'm going to need you up for the time. Okay. Yeah, but
Gloria
say-
Robin.
say- Sorry.
Gloria Robin, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road, Narragansett. A couple of issues. When you speak about the OLS reimbursement, that figure of $1,800 does not include the figure for the parking spaces. So as I understand it, that will be added to it, and OLS will be reimbursing us the percentage on that also. Plus, OLS will be reimbursing us on the 40 to 50% of all the development that we do inside the building. So it's not just that $1,800 that they're reimbursing on. It's the $1,800 plus the cost of the parking spaces, which is $150,000, I believe, and all the development that's on the inside of the building. So I'd like to make that clear to the public.
So I want to comment on that because I was confused by your comments.
Well,
So
I'm just-
I'm going to make sure I say this out loud. So if we spend $5.8 million on this library project, OLS will potentially reimburse us either 40 or 50%.
That's correct.
So Patrick said 1.8 million, which is, I think, the assessed value.
Right.
So your comments made me think that we would only get reimbursed $900,000.
Right, well, it's going to, on the building, on the value, the lowest assessed value of the building. Is
But it's
that
the
correct?
value plus the improvements for a library.
Is it
correct?
the
Plus the
improvement?
parking spaces.
Plus-
Yeah.
Plus the parking spaces.
So it becomes, so again, I want to repeat this. It's the reimbursement from the state of Rhode Island, which, by the way, we've never been reimbursed any $1 for any library project at all, ever. We're one of 2 towns, I think, that have never
Correct.
utilized OLS money. We would be reimbursed approximately, if you use the maximum bond value at 5.8, we would be reimbursed approximately 40 or 50%.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes. May I expand on that?
Sure.
Okay, so just to reiterate, the OLS reimbursement would be on the entire project, $5.8 million. But the reason I brought up it's 40 to 50% because the reimbursement would differ for each phase of the project. So Councilman Murray brought up a very good point. 1.8 million is the assessed value, the appraised value is different, and the purchase price are all different numbers. They would reimburse us on the lowest of those figures. But they also would adjust and maybe give us reimbursement at a higher rate for like the furniture and the build-out and stuff like that. So the number would be, the best case we would have is between 40 to 50%.
But Jim, on that point, and this is an important point, at the beginning of this process, we were very concerned about a lease arrangement. And so those initial negotiations, which were probably a year and a half ago, I went with some of the members of the board, and getting the condo arrangement was very important because it was a step more toward ownership than the rental situation, the lease situation. But to my knowledge, I don't know if OLS has actually analyzed the reimbursement for a condo situation, meaning they've done lease property, they've said no, outright ownership and fee simple, they've said yes on the reimbursement, correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. So under the, when we spoke to OLS at length, Karen Meller, was the designee from the state that we dealt with. So under the lease proposal, the lease land proposal, that had never been done, and the reimbursement would be almost non-existent on the land. All right, that's number one. But number two, Councilman Mannix, you are correct. Also, a library has never been built as a condo in the state, so they would, she said there would be reimbursement. It's just they could not give us a hard figure on that. But once again, she always went back to the 40 to 50% total project reimbursement.
Thank you. Gloria, yeah, you can finish, sure. You have another minute, I think.
Yeah, so the figures are higher than some of the council people are projecting, because it is the building, it is the land underneath, it's the parking spaces, and it's all the development that we do on the inside of the building. So I don't want it to look like it's going to be less than. It actually is going to be more than some people on the council think so. And, excuse me? It's not the outside of the building and the roof. You're absolutely right. But that's not a separate price tag. The other thing is that we all know that we need a new library building. And we all know that 67% of the Narragansett residents voted for the bond issue. And the bond issue was advertised in the newspaper as the Belmont building. That wasn't what it eventually was on the ballot, but most people assumed that it was the Belmont building. So I just want to make those numbers clear for everybody, the residents, that there's been a lot of comments made that are not totally true, and we'd like the truth to be totally told. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else wishing to speak? Mr. Gilbane.
Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to say a few words. I'm Bob Gilbane, CEO of Gilbane Development Company. And nearly a year ago, in a 2-to-1 vote, the voters voted to approve purchasing, as this woman just said, the former Belmont building for a new library, and asked this council to consider, with this town council, to negotiate with Gilbane an agreement. Jim Manny called me, explained the situation regarding the existing library building, and asked us to hold off on negotiating with anybody else, and negotiate openly with the town to see if we could put together an agreement. And asked us if we would sit down with the finance director, the solicitor, with the town council, and library board members. And over the last 11 months, there have been many meetings, I can't tell you how many, discussions, and a lot of frank and open dialogue and collaboration. And I'd just like to thank every member of the town council, the town manager, the finance director, town solicitors, the staff, and board of the library for their professionalism and courtesy throughout this process. As the owners of the property, we have discussed a range of issues to try and bring this deal to fruition. Because looking at the number of people that are here tonight, and looking at the almost a 2-to-1 vote, how important it is for this town to have a new library. The old library has outgrown, as the old saying is, it's outgrown its shoes. We believe that based upon the criteria that Jim told me we had to meet, that we have met the test. And we have an agreement in spirit and in fact that meets what we were told we had to meet. As a result, the terms to the town that we have tonight, we believe that the town has an agreement that has been only improved in the town's favor over where we stood last November. And I'd like to point out where we are tonight. First, the purchase price has been reduced. Originally, it was $2.7, then $2.5. It has now been reduced to $2.4 million, a reduction of $100,000 from last November. Second, we've agreed to sell the building and the land beneath it. It is a condominium form of ownership. I've been a realtor for over 40 years in Rhode Island, and a condominium form of ownership gives the town fee ownership in the land. That is very clear. If you look immediately next door, the Surfside condominiums, we have 99 residential units and 3 commercial units. And that project has increased the assessed valuation over $65 million to this town, resulting in an increase in the tax base of about $600,000. Those people are delighted to have fee ownership in a condominium next door. Further, in support of this sale, Gilbane has pledged a matching grant of up to $35,000 to jumpstart the library's fundraising efforts. The Murray Luchins Memorial Town Library is a cultural centerpiece of this community. It belongs in a very visible and accessible location in the center of your community. Acquiring the Belmont building makes abundant sense. Your library is already in the center of town. The location works. We are within 200 feet of your current location. Driving down Narragansett Avenue, you see the current Belmont building. Imagine having on it the name's Murray Luchins Memorial Library. Everybody coming into town, going to the beach will see it. Imagine if everybody in this room a year from now says, darn it, we missed this opportunity. Shame on all of us. Shame on Gilbane. Shame on this town council if we can't put this deal together. The building, the building has over 18,000 square feet, thereby doubling the amount of size of the current library. The town, right in front of it, would have 59 parking spaces. The current library has 14 spaces. It's not sufficient because as a good neighbor next door, we allow people, visitors to the library, parking in Trio's parking lot. The building and the site was newly rebuilt for Belmont in 2007, thereby only requiring interior modification for the town's library-specific needs. Imagine if we can't put this building together. We're going to have to go on a site search, try and finding a new site, try and put together, hire an architect to design a building, try to build and design a new library. Do you know what's happened to lumber prices in the last year? They've gone up 35%. Concrete prices have gone up 20%. With the existing Belmont building, it's already built. It is a bargain purchase price. Imagine if we miss this opportunity, all we have to do is remodel the existing building. Purchasing the existing building avoids time delays and cost overruns, often associated with building a new site and design-build finance projects. Surrounding the Belmont, over the last 2 years, Gilbane has invested over $1.5 million completely.
Okay, you have to wrap it up.
Okay. You have a unique opportunity to acquire the Belmont building in the center of town. In closing, we hope the Murray Luchins Library will reclaim its rightful place in the center of town. For all the reasons stated, we believe it's a great deal for the town and more than lives up to what the voters asked for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Riley, come on up. Thank you.
My name is Michael Riley. I've spent 40 years in the financial field. I live inside the skin, as Patrick would put it, of one of the entities near the ice cream shop, Mayonnaise. That's my office. I feel like I own it, not according to Patrick. I have 2 other condos there that we rent out to other people. Same thing, I guess I only own the skin. The eyeglass shop at the end of it, I only own the skin of that. If we're really going to make an analysis of the costs of buying the Belmont to make it a library, first, the 5 of you have to agree we're going to have a new library. I've heard things spit out around town like, you can have your library on this. We don't need a library. I've heard that.
I wish I said it.
We need a library, right?
Sure.
How long
Yes.
have we known that? Since 2008,
2008.
all right? Why the slow walk? Matthew, you've known about it. Why the slow walk? Where are the alternative proposals that you guys did who don't like the library idea? Where are your alternative proposals? You have a finance committee of 5 very sharp men who I know, but you did not employ them to look at alternative proposals. To me, this is a slow walk to do something you never want to do. You never want a new library. And while that library sits there, it sits there failing fire code. It sits there failing ADA. Are we sitting on another station fire? Oh, let's laugh at that. That's liability. That's called liability, and you have it. What are the other costs?
You got to wrap it up.
What are the other costs? Guess what? Interest rates aren't going lower. So the longer you dally, the more it's going to cost us.
Thank you,
Building
Mike.
costs aren't going lower.
Thank you, Mike. State your name and your address.
Jesse Pugh, 20 South Trail.
Sorry, they want to.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
just
if you want to line up, I just don't want to block the speaker, though. If you are interested in speaking, maybe next you can come around and we can do a lineup around here if you'd like. Go ahead.
Move the library to the old Belmont Market and respect the will of the overwhelming majority of voters. Twice as many people voted yes. It's been almost a year since the people voted yes on the library bond. So in anticipation of this meeting, I created a petition to remind the town council members of the stunning level of support this project has in the community. This past Wednesday, I posted an online petition urging the town council to vote yes and asking people to show their support by signing. In 5 days, the petition received well over 500 signatures. I made sure to email a link to everyone on the town council today. And I have 25 pages of signatures right here as well. Since these were real people taking the time to share their thoughts, I'd like to read a few of the comments. From Robin P. We really need a new library, and we also need to transform the building that failed as a market. Moving forward, this will be a good for everyone. From Pamela R. If the people spoke and voted yes 2-1, why wouldn't the town council vote yes? Did I miss something? No. Nothing has changed, and for anyone citing the building being part of a condo as an unforeseen development, that was in the wording on the ballot question as well. The exact wording was, the town may acquire the property either outright, through the subdivision of the parcel, or through the purchase of a ground lease or condominium unit. No ambiguity or surprises. This is exactly what the residents of the town voted for. This petition succeeded with a little effort and the power of the internet, but the truth is that some people aren't able to afford a computer or internet access. These are the people libraries are for. Parents with young kids desperate for something to do on a cold and rainy Saturday in October. These are the people a spacious, comfortable, well-located library are for. A student in need of a quiet place to study or write. This is who a well-run library is for. Libraries benefit everyone. Large vacant buildings in the center of town benefit nobody. The difference between the condo maintenance fees and the town maintaining their own are $6,000. That's it. So what are we actually talking about here? To a lot of us, a no vote signifies fear, and an unwillingness to work with Gilbane Properties. As people, we can and won't live our lives in fear, and our town council shouldn't either. The idea is to do the best you can with the cards you've been dealt. As a town council members, you've been handed cards born from the mistakes of decades past. The residents of this town don't care about getting the elusive perfect deal or getting the better of Gilbane. We want a fair deal, and we want the
Thank you.
center
You have
of
to
our
wrap
town
it up.
back. That is what this is, and that is what this does.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And that's helpful it's helpful if you give me the 1-minute warning so I can know. Thank you. Thank you. It's different without the timer. Thank you. State your name and your address, please.
Mary Ann Grinchenko, 221 Foddering Farm Road, and I'm the president of the Friends of Narragansett Library. On the library fact sheet, it was stated that the sale would reduce the tax revenue to the town by approximately $26,000, which is a fact. However, there was nothing on this fact sheet that stated the town will now have the old library. So they could either rent it, sell it, and that would be income. But that wasn't included in this. So to only be fair,
Can't sell it.
well, whatever you do, it's an asset. You're losing the $26,000 on tax review. Well, that's good. I can keep on going now.
Another 3 minutes.
So, that's a minus, but there's also the plus, that we still have the old building, however you use it. Okay, and the only thing else I wanted to say is that if this wasn't passed this evening and someone had suggested renovating the old building, there would be no reimbursement, possibly no reimbursement from OLIS because of the criteria of the building and also not enough parking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Richard.
Richard, you can take it off if you want, so you don't have to bend down.
take it
Yeah,
off?
you can take
Okay,
it right
well,
off.
I don't wanna-
There you go.
Thank you. My name is Richard Vangermersh. I live on Mount View Road. We have 5.8 million. We give, and I think give is the right word, 2.4 million to Gilbane, which I feel is still too high. We've only got $3.4 million left to do the job that I think is way too low. Now, I'm speaking here from risk and caution. I get the impression that this project is going to grow more than 5.8 million. What is going to be added to it are all the funds given by private donations. This, to me, is wrong. 5.8 is the cap. It's not enough. And hence, I see risk. The risk is that we will dance to the tune of the donors and make change order after change order. It's change orders that kill you. And let me close by saying, if that was the deal the voters voted on, I guarantee you it wouldn't have been 2-1.
Thank you, Richard.
Good evening. My name is Howard Poliner. I live at 1125 Point Judith Road. I have 3 children in the Narragansett school system. We're all regular users of the library, my wife, myself, and the children. We use it regularly. We love it. We think it's a huge addition to the town. Nobody here disputes that this is the library is good for the town, and we're only going to come out of here with something that's in the interest of the town. That's how everybody here feels, and that's really good. Libraries need to be in town centers. Libraries are integral parts of town centers. They're anchor stores. The library is not just a place where you have books. Libraries bring shoppers, they bring patrons. I leave the kids I go off to the restaurant and have a coffee. The kids always want to go to a little candy shop in the marketplace afterwards. It's expensive for us to go to the library unless we have self-discipline. It's but more than that, it's part of a vibrant town center. It's an investment in the city, and if you want to have a city center that attracts people and that's fun to go to and that contributes to the community feeling, it's a two-way street. The library brings in people, the library enriches people. Sometimes we're just in the center of town and then we just say, oh, we have a half hour to kill, or somebody wants to go to the store. I go read the newspaper there. It's nice to have the library in the center of town. So I don't know the numbers here well enough, and I'm not going to get into that and comment on that. Everybody else has gone that direction. But I've read a lot of studies on our urban development and library placement, and it has to be part of the city center. If you put it far away, you'll have access problems, and you lose out that anchor store element of what it can contribute to the rest of the businesses that are in the center of town. And finally, regarding condominiums, I live in a condominium, and it's true about the skin and so forth, but it is a form of ownership. And how and you can sell it afterwards, you can rent it, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. It does just have, there are certain common elements that you have together with that. You have rights and responsibilities with regard to those common elements. But I'll leave it at that, and I would encourage you to expand the library and make it an integral part of the business sector as well as the cultural center of Narragansett.
Thank you.
My name is James Greifendorf. I was the architect, one of the architects for the Belmont Building Complex, Newport, Rhode Island. My concern is just on the future, if the library or if Belmont is purchased for a library. I've been an architect for 57 years now, and programs change over the years once you own something, even during construction, renovation, as we talk about cost. There's change orders constantly. You can't get away from them. New ideas come along. My question is on the condominium skin, land that you own under, and the roof for the future. 5, 10, 15, 20 years as programs and needs change. If you need to expand this property that you're purchasing, lease, whatever the condo arrangement is, are you allowed to put other floors in, mainly dig down and put a sub-basement in because you own the land? Are you able to go up above the roof? Usually it's mezzanines are 1/3 the space, so within a roof, you're allowed by code to expand 1/3 into a second story. Are you allowed to change the roof lines in the future to expand into them? Does the parking have to follow those rules? So what kind of, I haven't seen any programming based on needs, interior renovation, and budgets for such, so I don't know if the remaining rehab renovation is justifiable right now or not, because there's no set of standards. All new furniture. Are you going to have 2, 3-story stacks involved with the library?
So, Steve, could you answer that question as far as the...
Well, you know, to be perfectly honest, we haven't even gotten to that point yet. You know, we're at step one. You know, I can say that there is expansion contemplated in this, and the expansion would be the purchase of the option of what is now the Pier Liquor Store. So there's square footage, there's contemplation and square footage expansion on a ground level, but I don't believe I haven't been in any discussions, I haven't heard of any discussions as far as creating a second or a third level.
My issue as an architect, we don't think in terms of 2 dimensions. We think in terms of 3 dimensions, the volume, because that's what you're paying for. And so the volume means much more than the square footage of one floor. And I just don't know where the future lies for libraries. I've done a couple on campuses, but
You have to
there's
wrap it
always changes.
Thank you. Lori? Oh. No, Lori, we got a line, yeah. So, Lori, we got a line. We're going to have the person come forward. You can come up and address it. I'm just trying to be fair for the 3 minutes in the line. If you're interested in speaking, you can certainly join the line. Go ahead. Hi.
Ann Black, 51 Flintstone Road, Narragansett. There are moments in time when individuals, as citizens, either individually or collectively, have an opportunity to make an impact and to leave a legacy. When this process started, now more than 10 years ago, it was because this community, of which we were not a part then, knew that they needed something better, something different, not only in the near term, but for its future. That moment in time has come. This is the moment this evening for the library. Each of you has an obligation to represent not only yourselves, but more importantly, the citizens of Narragansett. I'm not convinced that as a council, you have listened carefully and broadly to the opinions that have been brought to you. The bond issue was the first time that there was a significant public vote. That was a step in establishing that legacy. I simply ask you to listen carefully to what the people of this town are asking for, and I ask you to think individually and then collectively on behalf of all of us to leave that legacy and to plan for the future of the library in Narragansett. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Quigley, 86 Place Push Trail in Narragansett. What I want to know is, are we going to own the building?
John, can you hold it up so we can hear you? Yeah, there you go.
Are we going to own the building, the land underneath it, and the parking lot? 100%. Nobody has any interest in that at all.
We're going to own the land, the building, but not the parking lot.
Everything.
Not everything. The land in the building, but not the parking lot.
We're going to own the building 100%, and the land.
And the land underneath the building.
But not the parking lot.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
86%
86%.
of the building.
Potentially 14% in the years to come, which would be 100%.
So we have to spend more money on it.
But you don't own the land.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, just underneath.
Said no.
Okay, you have to direct it towards us, okay? Excuse me, John? We're going to have Steve Marcella explain that one more time for the public in case anybody missed the ownership piece of it.
So with this proposal, the town is proposing to purchase an 86% interest. So if you go to we'll call it the Belmont Building, there's the Pure Liquor Store to the left, and the remaining of the building. The town would purchase an 86% interest in that building. Wait. And when you have a condominium ownership, you own a fee simple, meaning you own the land underneath the building. However, the parking lot is what's called a limited common element. A limited common element is an element that's common to the association. However, a certain unit has, to simplify it, special rights to, in this case, it would be, they could limit the parking to library patrons, et cetera. So it would not be a fee simple ownership in the parking lot, only in an 86% portion of the building.
So who owns the other 14%?
The current owner, which is Gilbane Properties, has retained control of the other 14%.
Right of refusal.
Of the building, correct.
But they don't own the land.
No, they would own the 14% sliver underneath. If you ever been in Pier Liquor Store, that area that is that square footage of Pier Liquor Store, which is approximately 3,000 square feet.
So
That would-
Gilbane would own 14% of the land and 14% of the building.
Correct.
And the parking lot, what, 100%?
No, if you'd have to look at the map, because there's ample parking on all sides. Part of the parking would be common to the entire shopping plaza. The parking, I'll call it right in front of the Belmont building, would be a limited common element. And then there's also parking, which I'll call it on the liquor store side, which is all part of, keep in mind, this is a large shopping plaza. So parking isn't an issue, but as far as the unit, the limited common elements, it would just be I'll call it the 59 spaces in front of the building.
But they have the use of 59, but they don't own it.
They have a specific, they have a use of the 59, they do not own the land, it's a common element. However, they can essentially exclude, they can keep it to the library patrons if they wish.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, John. You got it? Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Oh, we got a line still going. Okay, got a line formed
Hi
here.
there, Tom Hoban, up until my mom's peaceful passing, 30 Kingston Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I timed this, it's less than 3 minutes.
Oh,
I
Miss
picked it
Rumpy
up
is
on
one
the
of my
way-
favorites.
One of my favorites. When my daughter was born, a friend gave it. I'd just like to speak in support of the library and our librarians who do such a fantastic job. If you could stand, please, if you're a librarian. This is dedicated by Barbara Cooney, Miss Rumphius. I think it's autobiographical because she lived in Maine and died a couple years ago. To St. Nicholas, patron saint of children, sailors, and maidens. The Lupin lady lives in a small house overlooking the sea. In between the rocks around her house grow blue and purple and rose-colored flowers. The Lupin lady is little and old, but she's not always been that way. I know, she's my great aunt, and she told me so. Once upon a time, she was a little girl named Alice who lived in a city by the sea. From the front stoop, she could see the wharfs and the bristling masts of tall ships. Many years ago, her grandfather had come to America on a large sailing ship. Now he worked at the shop at the bottom of the house making figureheads for the prows of the ships and carving Indians out of wood to put in front of cigar stores. For Alice's grandfather was an artist. He painted pictures, too, of sailing ships in places across the sea. When he was very busy, Alice helped him put in the skies. In the evening, Alice sat on her grandfather's knee and listened to stories of faraway places. When he had finished, Alice would say, "When I grow up, I too want to live in faraway places. And when I grow old, I too want to live beside the sea." "That is all very well, little Alice," he said, "but there's a third thing you must do." "What is that?" she asked. "You must do something to make the world more beautiful." "All right," she said, but she did not know what that could be. In the meantime, she got up, she washed her face, ate porridge for breakfast, went to school, came home, did her homework, and pretty soon she was all grown up. Then my great-aunt Alice set out to do the 3 things she had told her grandfather she was going to do. She left home and went to live in another city far from the sea and the salt air. There she worked in a library, dusting books and keeping them from getting mixed up, and helping people find the ones they wanted. Some of the books told her about faraway places. People called her Miss Rumphius now. Sometimes she went to the conservatory in the middle of the park. When she stepped inside on a wintry day, the warm, moist air wrapped itself around her, and the sweet smell of jasmine filled her nose. "This is almost like a tropical island," said Miss Rumphius, "but not quite." So she went to a real tropical island where people kept cockatoos and monkeys as pets. She walked on long beaches picking up beautiful shells. One day, she met the Bapa Raja. "You must be tired," he said. "Come into my house and rest." So she went in and met the Bapa Raja's wife.
It's almost, time's up.
Okay.
Thank
So
you,
I'll
we've
just-
enjoyed it very much.
I'll just do the closing, if you don't mind. Just say that she planted rose and purple and pink lupins. So thank you very much for the library and for your decision in the right
Thank
place
you.
for children. Thank you.
Marie Yunkin, now a resident of South Kingstown, 301 Church Street, Wakefield, but lived in Narragansett for 45 years. A few years ago, I started something called Where's the Town when I lived in Narragansett. Because I was concerned about the middle of the town and the fact that we had no sense of community. If the library moves to the center of the town, and I don't care if it's Gilbane or whoever who owned it, it is in the center of town. It will increase the business around it, the shops and everything that we have. It will be the cultural center of the community with enough space to be that. The library has programs. It has places for kids, students, seniors to go to study, to read, to stay out of the cold and out of the heat. The library is more than a Kindle, and it also is a Kindle. This library will make Narragansett a town again in the center, and then we won't have to say, where's the town anymore.
Thank you, Marie. Hey, Dan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Barry. I live at 25 Stratford Avenue in Bonnet Shores. I'm a fundraising consultant. I've been a consultant close to 40 years. Some of the work I've done has been the athletic complex that was recently finished. I did the Station Fire Memorial Park campaign. I also did the Tiverton Library campaign, the most recent last library campaign that was done. I was retained by the board of the library to take a snapshot and to determine a fundraising feasibility and planning study. I've been out visiting people. I appreciate some town council members who met with me. Other members in the community met with me, and it was a great cross-section. I'm only 60% of the way done, but I want to give you a snapshot tonight as to where we are. The first question I asked everybody in the study, besides whether or not you're a member or not, was, do you support the plan to move to Belmont location? 80% of the people I visited said yes. 20% said no. Some of the strengths you've heard already. It's the center of town, and I won't go over all of that. The strengths are the same ones I'm hearing over and over again from the people I've seen. Some things that have not been mentioned: it provides more space for seniors, computers, teen tutoring, and study areas, and a much-needed larger children's section. I'm hearing those areas of concern over and over again in the community. I've also been asking, has the library told its story well? Do people know what the library is trying to do? 70% of the people said yes, 30% of the people said no. So no matter what we do, there's still a segment that's not paying attention. But 70% of the people said yes, they're paying attention to it. I also asked them if we went forward with either this location or a different location, would you be involved in a capital campaign to help the library? 89% said they would join a leadership committee. Outstandingly high percentage for a study. I'm not done yet, so I'm going to probably get some no's.
Time. You have to wrap it
Campaign
up.
leaders, 80%. The key thing from the study is a snapshot is people are supporting this proposal very strongly.
Thank you, Dan.
Naomi McDonald, 30 Kingstown Road, right across from the library. Can somebody remind me what the cost to each taxpayer is going to be for this new library? The increase cost? $25 a year. If anybody can't afford it, I'll pay it for you.
Oh.
And even if we double, if the costs, say, doubled by the time we got the library done, so that's $50 a year. If somebody can't afford it, I'll be glad to pay it for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lori Kelly,
I'm on the board of the library. We have been working on this project since 2008. We have presented 10 different plans to previous managers, councilmen. We have our ducks in a row. We are not trying to spend more money. The 5.8 is the most reasonable and fiscally responsible thing to do. That is why we got such an overwhelming vote for it. I was going, talking out of order previously because I'm upset that no one on the council, the manager, or the lawyers would say to the gentleman who said, what about expansion, that this entire project was predicated on getting state money, and we hired a library consultant, and her report about how much space, physical space we need, and the future of the library for the next 30 to 40 years is on our website. So don't say that that has not been answered. That is why we chose this building, for all the reasons you're hearing tonight, and we have heard many professionals in construction say you cannot build this building for 2.4. Mr. Murray, you might be right that they're going to take the lower number of assessment, but are you also adding in the $900,000 that the Champlain Fund gave to the Tiverton Library, Rhode Island Foundation? All of those sorts of things, not just our private donations, is going to bring this number down. If you walk away from this, you're looking at 11 million. How do I know that? That's the size and the expense that Tiverton paid in 2014. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Karen Shabshelowitz, 63 Wanda Street, Narragansett. Also a member of the Library Board of Trustees. Also a senior. I've been a lifelong library user. From my youngest memories, I can remember going to the library and being so excited about the new books that I would get. I also was quite sickly as a child, having bad asthma, and would spend a lot of time reading, whereas other children were out playing ball and doing other athletic activities. I loved reading. I grew up in Fall River, so I would go to the library every day after high school to do my homework. And then on Saturdays, I would go to the Providence Library by public bus to use the Providence Library. As I became older and had children, I spent many hours at story hours with my children, and they all developed a love of libraries, a love of learning. We didn't have much money, but the great thing about a library is it's free, and it can lead to a lot of different opportunities and different ways of learning. I take issue with some of the town council members who didn't do their homework and do their homework before they narrowed us down to 2 spaces a few years ago. And Mr. Mannix, you were on the council then, and I remember Mr. Wilkins saying, I don't want it back in the woods back there. And so we were limited to 2 sites. So it's sort of ironic at this point that the library board is being criticized for this or for that. I also think a library can be a great legacy, and I don't know you, Mr. Gilbane, but I would hope you would consider contributing to the library when we become...
He already did. He already made a commitment publicly.
But it's a great legacy to leave your children and to leave in the family name and to leave this town, and it really helps build on community. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Stan Wojciechowski, Narragansett. Yes, we all love the library, and I especially do. My wife at the library. I love the library, no doubt about it. But we can't ignore costs. And I think the town manager brought up one issue here that stuck in my mind tonight. He said that they initially started with a condo fee of $70,000, which was later reduced to $50,000. Well, that's because we had a little bit of a strong arm ability now because we're in the beginning. But I can just see, once we're in there, now we have no choice on what the condo fee can go to. And, you know, I can see that $50,000 being $250,000. I don't know where it's going to be, but it's going to be not out of our control, The condo fees out of our control, and when that happens, the costs get out of control. 100 parking spaces we need, not 59, 100. And this is not, 59 is not totally, you mean to say we're going to be able to rope off 59 spaces during the movie times or whatever times there are? I'm not so sure, especially when additional businesses go there that need parking. I'm not so sure we're going to get that 59 spaces when we need 100, because I expect more people will be attracted to the library, and we're going to need 100, 150, 200. We're going to need a lot more space than we have right there. And I don't know what the limit is, but it doesn't seem, it's just too tight down there, and it's not completely filled down there, and there's going to be more spaces. You know, I looked at the library, and I like it. It's transformed a little bit. It went from quiet space to event space, which is quiet space versus noisy space. And that's why I looked at Sunset Farms. Where Sunset Farms provide noisy space, and a building right next to it would be quiet space. Now you say you can't do that because of the land trust regulations. I say you get into the land trust regulations and do what you have to do to make it appropriate. Because now we only need a quiet building because we already have the noisy building there. So we do in fact have another choice, in fact, to give us a bigger library for the quiet space that we all like, as well as event space. So we have to look at this a little more.
Thank you, Stanley.
Thank you very much.
Madam President, I have a question for the town manager.
Sure.
Jim, the savings of the camp charges from $70,000 to $50,000, wasn't that mostly brought down because we're not going to pay taxes to ourselves, property taxes to ourselves?
That is a factor. Some of that number that was backed out was the 70,000. From the 70,000, the 70,000 figure was the standard fee that was charged to all the other tenants.
Great, but the lion's share of that savings was because we're not going to charge ourselves property taxes, correct?
That's correct, and and also no management fees to the Gilbane Company.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Bob Learman, 24 East Shore Road. I'm not a native Rhode Islander, and I get the feeling that most of the people in this room are. I grew up on a sprawling metropolis called Long Island, where nobody knew anybody, and there was no center of town. If I never drive down the Long Island Expressway again, that's okay. I just want you people to know how lucky you are to be in such a special place, and rather than nitpick the dollars and the pennies regarding this, to make the center of this town even greater than it is a blessing, and you should all take advantage of it.
Thank you.
My name is Patty Arkwright, and I'm proud to say that I'm the director of the Maury Lugents Public Library. I just wanted to bring up the relevance of libraries today because that has been a question many have brought up. I have been at the library for almost 27 years. I started as a children's librarian, worked my way up to the director. I have seen a library that had very little activity when I first started there. There were no programs to say for adults, there were children's programs. The growth in use of the library over those years has just continued each year. And today, we have one of the busiest libraries in the state. And I think that's due to all the support from these people here, and I thank you for coming. And I think it's also due to the staff who are there to serve the public, to meet their needs, and the biggest part of libraries today is to access information. How we access it has changed over the years, but the bottom line is libraries provide the residents of Narragansett and other people around the world, of course, but particularly here, they provide the access for information that is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Anybody else wishing to speak? State your name and address.
Bethany Graves, Boston Neck Road. Due to the continuation of the library issue during the June Town Council meeting, I was unable to voice my own heartfelt and impassioned plea for a library worthy of the town of Narragansett and its residents. But this time I decided I'm just going to deal with the facts, and it is a fact that the official public notice placed in our newspaper by the town council clearly stated moving our library to the former Belmont location. It is a fact that more than 5,000 residents voted to do this. It is also a fact that 4 out of 5 council members spoke out in support of the library project during the November forum. I, in fact, voted based on that support, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of the fact that the move to the old Belmont building is the most cost-effective, or to use a word that always appeals to voters, the cheapest option. It is also the most efficient considering the amount of time already squandered. Certainly the fastest option, and most importantly, the option voters voted for. It is a fact that this town desperately needs a new library with more room and more parking. I wonder how many of you, if any of you, are familiar with all of the services our library provides to this community. I would love to have the time and the opportunity to quiz you on these services, because it is also a fact that the Narragansett Town Library, the library of the town of Narragansett, is priceless to our community, and both the library and its patrons the voters of Narragansett, deserve the most cost-effective, efficient, fastest route to a building worthy of the character and intelligence of our town, that reflects the character of our town, the library we voted for. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on the motion before the council?
Tough room.
State your name and your address, please.
Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Windward Circle. You really have to admire the orchestration, no matter what side of the issue you're on, and the passion that people have for the library. And there's no question that the library is really important to the community. And the narrative, the story of the library, I agree with all of it that I've heard. But the problem is we have to go from story time to deal time. And unfortunately, you can put a price on the library. This is an incredibly complicated deal. And I think the thing is that it could jeopardize the future of the library itself to do what people don't want to do. We only own 86% of it. We're in a condo association with others. I appreciate all the work that everybody put into this and all the passion people have. But it doesn't mean that it's a good deal for the town or the right deal. You can feel the frustration and the passion. It's really palpable here. But we have to remember that it's still money. Money has to be spent. But more importantly, the future of the library, to be able to do what people want to do. Right? So if a councilor votes against this, it doesn't mean they're anti-library. I think that's really unfair. That's incredibly unfair, because they are actually looking out for the future of the library. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Joshua LaBosse here. I live in Eastward Look. I don't know if you can say that if one of the council members doesn't, if they vote against it, but they still might be for the library. I'm appalled. I mean, I've learned about this in the last 3 weeks. So the fact that it's been 11 years or something like that. Like, you get, that's ridiculous. Like, to say that they could vote no to this when so many people have approved this area and said this was a great deal, but then, like, give them the out, even though it's taken this many years. All right, how about, let's talk about cost. How about the cost that I'm the only one, it seems, my age here? How about the cost that everyone I know, my age, is basically a moron because all they do is look at these all day? Okay, how about that cost? Now, how about the cost of, like, this is more than just a building thing. This is also just a cultural thing too, okay? Because our schools now, they're pushing this agenda for every kid who doesn't have one of these needs to have it, and he needs to take it home. The one-to-one program, okay, that's indoctrination crap, all right? And that's coming from the federal government. No one knows that, and no one cares. And the thing, okay, and here's another thing. You want to look something up that's really interesting? Look up Steve Jobs' screen time for children. Steve Jobs, the inventor of the iPhone, the inventor of the iPad. You'd think that his kids would be on those things. I mean, he passed away. But you think that when he was alive, his kids would be on those things all the time, right? Not even close. Okay? So this idea, okay.
You have 1 minute left, and you need to address the council, okay?
This way. Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Keep going, we're listening.
Sorry. Like I said, first time here.
No, you're doing a great job, keep going.
Thank you. Okay, so Steve Jobs, yeah. So by not giving any sort of priority to the town library, we're further instilling in our children that books are secondary. Books aren't like the actual lifeblood that's been transferring information, and more than just information, but just stories and wonderful things since the beginning of stinking time, okay? We've had smartphones for 10 years. For 10 years. But we're giving precedence to it's an idolatry of technology, and it's ridiculous. And we should build this library, or we should move it into a new place. It should have priority. Let's not talk about cost. Okay, I mean, let's talk. All right, let's not talk about cost.
Your time's
but cost
up.
has been addressed.
Thank you for your interest and your passion. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Hi, Patrick Kavanaugh, 109 Winterberry Road, north end of town. I pretty much have a big mouth, so hopefully everybody can hear me.
Can you speak into the mic?
Not big enough, I guess. Okay. Everybody that's come up here tonight has either been for or against the library, and that's not what I'm going to speak to really quickly. It's going to be, you guys all have, when you were elected, a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Narragansett. But I hope at the end of wherever the library ends up, you guys make the most economically correct decision for the town taxpayers today and for the future taxpayers of Narragansett going forward. Because after you guys are all done on the council, those bills or that cost or that decision is going to be in perpetuity. So, and I have a quick question for the town manager. We have a small town land-wise. Does URI down at the Bay Campus pay taxes for all that expensive land that they own down there? Do we get property tax for that? I don't know if we do. We don't, right? The state of Rhode Island owns pretty much most of Point Judith. Do we receive property tax from the state of Rhode Island for all that land down in Point Judith?
No, I think it's...
Okay, we don't receive any money from Fort Greene, all of that valuable land that's owned by the Army, correct?
Correct.
And obviously, the town itself already owns a lot of land within the town. So that doesn't leave a lot of taxable tax base for the future of this town. So all I'm trying to say is we're limited in acreage. A lot of the acreage is already taken up by the federal government, the state of Rhode Island, and the town of Narragansett. Hopefully all of you folks, when the final decision is made, and I think our unfunded liability is over $100 million, OPEB and things like that, is that correct? For Narragansett, we're over $100 million in the hole?
It's about 60 million for the pension and about 60 for the OPEB.
So we're $120 million in the hole as we stand here today, not assuming any other future debts, correct?
Well, it's not unfunded, that's the liability.
Liability is a bill we owe.
Well, we are funding it.
It's a bill we owe, $120 million. So hopefully at the end of it, what I'm trying to get across is, I'm not for or against a library, Wherever it ends up, fantastic, but do the right, financially correct thing for the future taxpayers of the town of Narragansett.
Thank you, time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, at this point, I have a couple of things that I'd like to say, and then I'll open it up to the council, and then we'll take a break before the vote, maybe, or after the vote, So I just want to say a few things. We began the discussions about expanding the library in 2008. As the most senior town council member, I've been involved with the library project for a very long time. I've sat with 3 elected town councils, 2 appointed solicitors, 3 town managers. I've participated in the library board discussions with past councils and attended public workshops for over 8 years. For the Narragansett residents that say, why rush, let's take some time and do a further analysis, I would say 8 years is long enough. Tonight is time for making a decision and taking action. It is the time for the town to move forward with this motion before us tonight and approve the purchase of the building, the land, and the common elements of the Belmont Marketplace for a town library for Narragansett. The location is centrally located in the downtown area, making it a perfect spot for the Narragansett residents. In November, in the election, nearly 70% of the Narragansett residents voted for the acquisition and renovation for a library bond not to exceed $5.8 million for the purpose of a new library. It stated that the purpose of this borrowing was to provide the funds for the town to acquire the former Belmont Marketplace. That was what the residents voted for. Some would say that the voters are confused or they didn't understand what they were voting for. What I would say is, don't underestimate the Narragansett residents and when they vote. The residents have spoken, and this council should listen. The issue isn't if you like or you trust Gilbane, but more about the town having the ability to create a pathway to ownership. I would say it does, absolutely. This purchase of the building, Unit 1, with the option of Unit 2, will give the town the ability to own the land and the building in this transaction. I am not a real estate person, but $2.4 million for 18,000 square feet, 59 parking spaces, administrative offices is a great deal in the town of Narragansett. If you look at the properties, and again, I'm not a real estate person, but you look at the pier and you look at the value of the properties, that seems like a really good transaction to me. You may not like that it's a condo. That's not the best thing. You may not like the ability about the CAM fees, but if you look at the CAM fees and you look at the negotiation of the deal, 70, 50, and 30, and you look at the maintenance costs that it would cost for the town to take care of the property, they're $1,000 apart. So one way or another, we would be paying those fees on an annual basis. I believe that the negotiations have been fair and they've been honest, and why we've been attempting to make an agreement with the Belmont Marketplace. The Office of Library Informational Services will reimburse the town the 40 to 50% of the cost of the project, which will be anywhere from $2.3 million to $2.9. I think that's excellent, and I fully support this motion. I want to just take a minute. I want to thank the town manager, the town staff, for working their countless hours on this library project. I want to thank Lori Kelly and her board for their passion, their persistence, and their dedication to the project over the last 8 years. And lastly, I'd like to thank Mr. Bob Gilbane for his patience in working with the town. He has demonstrated his willingness to make sure that the town of Narragansett is the #1 buyer of this property. Additionally, he has offered a donation towards the library to show his commitment and his overall support for libraries. This vote is probably one of the biggest votes I will take in the 10 years that I've served on the town council. And I urge my colleagues up here tonight to vote yes for the purchase of the Belmont. And I want to be remembered with the council as a council 10, 20, 50 years ago that can say we did something right for the town of Narragansett. So I hope that they will support that.
So I'm not going to rehash all the great points that were made here tonight. I will say absolutely stellar job to Jim and the solicitors, and thank you very much, Mr. Gilbane, for your flexibility. It's truly wonderful. I do want to remind folks that we talk about percentages, but there were 5,100 votes yes and about 24 no for the bond. So, okay, even if a third were confused, there's still an overwhelming response for the library in the location that was indicated in the newspaper, which happened to say the Belmont Marketplace. So I wasn't confused. I've been a supporter forever. I won't talk about where's the town. My mother worked at the Old Pier Pharmacy in the Brick, whatever that road, I don't even know what the road is, and she worked across the street. My uncle worked in the Providence Public Library. I have an affinity for libraries, and to the young person that was complaining about being attached to their device, I have two boys that are in their 20s that are absolutely attached to their devices. I'm not proud of this, but I think one said the last book he read was in 7th grade or something, so kidding. So I am 100% in support of this motion. This was a motion or a project that I ran on, or I ran in support of. When I ran, I thought, you know, this town it's a wonderful place to be. I moved back in 2014. I noticed there are some things that could make the town a little better. We struggle with paving Memorial Square. I mean, that makes my brain hurt. But this library and the work that's been done to put this library in the spot where it should be is extraordinary. I applaud the folks in terms of commitment. Jane Colombo, I don't want to call you out, but I'm going to. The longest town employee, I think, period, let alone the library for some large number of years. Patty, wherever Patty is, 27 years, I think she said. Extraordinary amount of time spent making this what it should be. And the fact is, 700 people a day visit this library. Nobody visits the vacant Belmont building.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else wishing to speak?
So in front of me, I have the bond that we voted on. This is the ballot that we voted on. And unlike what has been said and what Susan just mentioned, this is what it says that we voted on last November. Shall an act be passed at the 2016 session of the General Assembly entitled an act authorizing the town of Narragansett to finance the acquisition and renovation of real estate and or interests or rights therein and related equipment for the library. It does not specify a location. I say this because I voted yes for the library. Library is a very important part of any town, and I thoroughly understand that. However, when I took oath of office, I also took a responsibility to make decisions, the best financial decisions for the town. Now, I know that there's a level of frustration in this building, and it's warranted. This process has gone on way too long, and for many of you, you did not find out until recently what we have been talking about in executive session, and I think that that was wrong. And I know that a couple of times myself and Mr. Mannix during this process have voiced the fact that we wish we could come forward with information for you. I think it would have made it a lot easier. Having said that, at one point when we were in discussion, it got to the point that it was a 2.4 acquisition cost, and I was ready to go ahead and vote for that. However, we did have a number of questions that came up, and I do need to applaud Mr. Murray for the amount of time and effort he put in to try to make this project go through. Patrick and I are both in the real estate industry. We both understand real estate. Patrick has much more commercial than I, so he really dug more deeply into the issues and kept asking more and more questions to our town attorneys, who did a tremendous amount of research going back and forth with Mr. Gabane and our town manager, Jim Manny, who did an incredible job. But quite honestly, every time they came back, it got worse. All of a sudden, after the 2.4, oh, but there's also CAM charges. And it kept going down the road where it got to be a point that as hard as Patrick tried to find ways for me to say yes, I couldn't, because I took that oath of office for everyone here and everyone at home that can't be watching me live to make sure that I do the best thing in the benefit of the town. So as much as I would like to be able to say, yes, I'll give you a blank check, I can't do that because we have other things in town that we need to take a look at. And as far as the property itself, Belmont, let's talk about that. That building has been empty for a long time. And because I am in real estate, and Patrick is as well, we'll let you know that things stay empty or vacant or not sold for 3 reasons. It's certainly not the location, right? You hear location, location, location. Well, there's no better location than that building. However, you look at other things. You look at cost. You look at conditions. So the cost is way too high, or someone would have purchased the rights by now. And then the conditions. What you learned tonight as far as the conditions, things attached, the condo fees, other things attached to that, are conditions that other entities decided not to go with. And one thing that we need to understand is, although we continue to call it the Belmont Building, the Servano family don't own it. It's not that family that contributes so wholly and so wonderfully to our community. I mean, we couldn't ask more from the people that own the Belmont. This is nothing against you, Mr. Gilbane, but it's the Gilbane industry that is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. That's not the friendly neighbor next door. It's a multi-billion-dollar corporation that has the ability and the aptitude to be able to make decisions. No offense to our council and to our town manager, but certainly run circles around them, because that's what they do all day long. They make real estate transactions. So what can we expect for the future for these CAM charges? We can't expect them to go up or down, but I don't know. I, for one, probably expect them to go up. Because one thing that multi-billion-dollar corporations are great at are making profits for their companies and for their shareholders. And that's what we would expect them to do in the future. So I take a look at those things. I take a look at the fact that I voted for it. Yes, I totally understand. We need a new library. I would like to be able to dedicate the resources for that. We need to take a look, and I'm sorry I wasn't on the council that took a look at that said and made it sound like the library was going to be either at the Belmont Building. But we do have so many other town-owned buildings. Someone mentioned tonight the Kinney Bungalow. I believe it was Stanley. We have the Kinney Bungalow. We have the community center. I respected you. Please respect me, people. Please. Hey. So we do have many other owned town buildings that we could take a look at and invest a good amount of money in. So that's what I have to say. Thank you for your respect. I've always given mine to you.
Excuse me, when the council's speaking, you need to listen. Thank you.
You're up, man.
You want me to go next?
Yes.
So the town council has been authorized by the voters to borrow up to $5.8 million to finance the acquisition and renovation of real estate for a library. This authorization does not require us to purchase the Belmont IGA building. Many residents voted to approve this bond money to improve our library, but did not want the town to enter into a real estate deal with Gilbane, which currently owns the Belmont IGA building. Many, many residents are conscious and wary of the town's complicated history with Gilbane. Without getting into all the details of that history, I thought it was important to obtain a good deal for the town and use that deal as a springboard for a more cooperative relationship with Gilbane. Throughout this process, I and others consistently stated that if a deal could not be reached with Gilbane, then the plan B would be to renovate and refurbish our existing library. I consistently stated that, and the Board of Trustees knows that as well. I consistently stated that throughout this process. This statement was not just a negotiation tactic, but a realistic perspective that if a deal to purchase or acquire new property became too expensive, the town could still fix our existing library. So is the deal before us a good deal? Let's start with the purchase price, $2.4 million. Real estate negotiations ultimately end up somewhere between what each side wants. Early negotiations with Gilbane had gotten us to a purchase price of $2.5 million. But that number was not tied to a purchase and sales agreement, and the town's intent was to negotiate that number downward. The assessed value of the Belmont IGA building, as you've all heard tonight, is $1.8 million. So moving up from that number should be approached with skepticism. It's important to note that the only element of this $5.8 million bond referendum that is within the town's control is the purchase price. That's the only element that's within our control. Other elements, such as condo maintenance fees, costs of building and renovation, are variable and can increase. So I and other council members asked for an appraisal for this property, which is very common in real estate transactions. The town's appraisal came back at $2.05 million. In the meantime, our new town manager, Jim Manny, had successfully negotiated Gilbane's asking price to $2.4 million. So we had a gap between the two of $350,000. My responsibility is to protect all of the town's taxpayers. I asked for an appraisal for that reason, for the same reason people ask for appraisals in private real estate deals, to have an objective number to communicate to the town this property's value. I cannot look the taxpayers and residents of this town in the eyes and say that I'm willing to shell out $350,000 more than the appraised value or $600,000 more than the assessed value to purchase this particular property. This is what fiscal responsibility is all about. I've consistently fought for major savings for the taxpayers of this town when savings are large, when we're in our union negotiations, and when we're in the budget in April and we're looking at the big dollar numbers. You don't see me quibble over the small numbers. It's the big numbers that are important. I work to obtain real savings for our taxpayers when we are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. The residents do not expect us to borrow every last penny of the $5.8 million bond money to fix, renovate, or relocate the library. The $350,000 gap matters because as construction and renovation costs go over budget, we will need that extra cushion to absorb the financial blows. What about the other elements of the deal? The condominium arrangement presents pitfalls of its own. First, it does not involve outright ownership and fee simple. This aspect of the deal complicates our potential 40% reimbursement from the state's OLIS fund. Second, this arrangement requires us to pay annual condo assessment fees, which has been discussed, to Gilbane. These fees will likely increase over the years, and the town will be beholden to Gilbane or an entity that takes over for Gilbane to pay those fees annually. Several months ago, it became clear to me that this was a bad deal for the town. I expressed that view to my colleagues in the executive sessions, and that is why I asked to open up those executive sessions so that all the townspeople could hear what the terms of the deal were. In short, the purchase price, the ownership arrangement, and the condo maintenance fees are all elements that a fiscally responsible person should not agree to. Before talking about other options for the library, it is important to address our recent experience with the bond money for the school athletic field, the football field. Some advocates of the Gilbane deal have indicated to me that it's unfair that the school got its athletic field first and that the library should not be pushed to the side. I generally agree there's two key differences. First, the school bond was for $1.8 million, not $5.8 million. And even with the anticipated OLIS reimbursements, that gap is quite large. Second, we should learn from our past experiences. One reason I'm concerned about the cost overruns with the library project is that the athletic field project required more money than was originally budgeted. However, the school committee had a large fund balance or surplus from which it could draw to make up the cost overruns. There's no similar size fund balance on the library side, so we should be doubly cautious when allocating and budgeting funds for the project. Okay, so where does this leave us if we do not approve the Gilbane deal? We can still use the bond money to refurbish our existing library. We can explore other sites on which to build a new library, and may want to do so given the Belmont IGA's buildings being in a floodplain area. I do not intend to abandon the effort to make our library handicapped accessible and better able to serve our residents' needs. We'll all need to work together on that. I know many people are frustrated. I know many people are frustrated that the library's renovation, relocation project has dragged on. These negotiations dragged on longer than they should have. However, that frustration should not result in us wasting taxpayer money or backing into a bad deal that will have negative long-term ramifications for our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, all right. Good evening. For the record, back in January 2016, the previous town council voted 4-1 for this bond issue of $5.8 million, and I was the dissenting vote. So I've been consistent with my message of where we need to save money. Now, for the record, I don't have a problem with the purchase price of Gilbane. I'm not too concerned about the CAM charges. My major concern is the future unknown relationship with the Gilbane Corporation. With a 70% interest, controlling interest in that association, What does the future look like? So no, can anybody give me an answer? I don't want to be 10, 30, 40 years from now, and somebody say, who the heck put the library here for whatever reason? Maybe our town solicitor, Steve, can expand this relationship. But it's an unknown. And that, to me, is why I can't support this. Now hear me out. You can heckle me later. I promise you can heckle later. For starters, I did a little research on that online petition, and congrats to you and hats off. You got, last time I checked, it was like 520 signatures. I did a little research, and they left your address there, not your address, but what town you're from, okay? And I could only sample, the website only let me sample 42 of the voting, which is just less than 10% of that 500. So 24% who voted for it were from out of state. 40% were from out of town. Only 36% registered themselves as Narragansett residents, and that's who I represent.
Sorry. Okay.
Right. All right, so I'm just, I mean, they say they got 500, people voting, but who are these people? One participant was from San Francisco, all right? They're not paying taxes. They're not going to pay the taxes on this.
Excuse me.
All right.
Okay, there's not a dialogue going back and
All
forth.
right, with that said, I want to thank the Gilbane family for their good faith negotiations. They did capitulate on several fronts, to the surprise of many of us, and I want to thank them. They did, backed off on several issues. But for me, without a clear path to clear title ownership, I cannot support it. Now, without reservation, this has been it's turned into a tale of two libraries, the Gilbane location and somewhere else, okay? And without reservation, this is a far, far better thing I do than any other decision I have made for the town of Narragansett. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretti is going to speak. Now,
So I have,
excuse me.
I just have a couple little tidbits of information if you're interested. So I'm not really worried at all about the Gilbane Corporation. It took me about 30 seconds to research that they've been, they started in the U.S. in like 1845. There's like 4 or 5 generations. They built or partially built the Smithsonian, Lake Placid. So I'm not concerned about the relationship we have with Gilbane. I'm also not concerned about the survey. Thank you very much for doing the survey. I think that's great.
Okay.
So I also
Mr.
want to
Moretti's
indicate, and this
speaking.
is the last time I'll say this publicly, 5,100 people. So they're registered voters in the town of Narragansett. 5,100. More votes than anybody sitting at this table by a factor of 2. 5,100. Susan, 3,800. The next closest, 3,400. So, sorry, but they care more about the library than they do about us. All right? I am absolutely 100% in favor of this library being in the center of town. There is no reason to put it anywhere else.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moretti. So we have a motion on the floor. I'll reread the motion. A motion to approve and purchase of the building, land, associated limited common elements for the former Belmont Marketplace from GP Peer Realtor LLC for the sum of $2.4 million. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Oh, it was already done. Okay.
Okay, so just call it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No.
I didn't say that. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank can heckle.
Okay, we're going to take a break. So, thank you. Thank you for your input. Thank you for being here, and I'm sorry.
All right. See you in November. All right.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not staying for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
I agree with you. We're getting out of that right now. All right, I'm staying.
Do you want to do historic first? Yeah, let's do the liquor. We'll do the liquor licenses last. Okay, the public hearing for the historic districts, a public hearing to amend the text of Section 5 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett entitled zoning for the purpose of including Boone Street as a historic district zone and expanded the Earls Court Historic District zones. So that's open.
Move to open.
Oh, we have to move to open. She's not there?
Oh, we get the steno.
Sorry, I need her to come forward. Is she here, Ann?
Break after that last hearing.
Yeah, I know.
Who needs a break?
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just gonna wait for her to plug in. Yeah, and Donnie Packer has one, yeah. Where is, oh. Okay, we just gotta set her up and just take a minute. I could use the minute, actually. Tell me when you're all set, okay? Oh, you're all set? Okay. So we're back to the public hearing on the historic district, and we'll accept some exhibits. Steve, if you want to come up.
Can I do
Oh,
it
you
from
can do
here?
it there, yes, sure.
So we're back on the record. So for the record, I would like just to read 3 exhibits into the record that have been filed into the clerk's office. Exhibit number 3 is a letter from Attorney Donald Packer dated October 10th, 2017, with 7-14-16 report from Carrigan, C-A-R-R-I-G-A-N Engineering, Inc., and portions of an appraisal by Andolfo Appraisal Associates, Inc., dated November 2012. The 4th exhibit, entitled Exhibit Number 4, is an email from Linda Schwartzman Nevins, dated October 8th, 2017. And the 5th exhibit filed with the clerk is Exhibit 5, letter from Attorney Patrick Doherty, dated October 16th, 2017, on behalf of James and Rebecca Durkin. I'm sorry, one more, handwritten Exhibit Number 6, an email from Vicky Swanberg, dated October 16th, 2017, at 3:59 p.m.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd also like to note, just picking up on Mr. Marcello's comments that at your first meeting, the town clerk supplied you with a compendium with a few letters in it. I don't have the names of those individuals with me, but they should be provided for the record. Ann says she's got them. So, and at the next meeting on November 6th, I'll give you everything that we've gotten from today up to that date also. So let me open with just reminding you where we were. We had a public hearing on October 2nd addressing the Central Street expansion proposed and the Ocean Road Historic District expansion proposed. Tonight we're at the second of 3 meetings. We are here to consider 2 of the proposed historic districts. One is the Earls Court Historic District, which, as you know, exists today as a voluntary district. It is being suggested to be expanded to both the north and the south and to be made fully regulated. Then there's a new district suggested tonight, and that is the Boone Street Historic District. This would be establishing a new district roughly bounded by the Central Street District to the north, the Summer Street and Driftwood Apartments to the west, South Pier Road to the south, Ocean Road to the east. Tonight we will be just addressing the mapping and giving you the statistics on the proposals on both of those districts. With that, I'll turn it over to Keith Lescarbo, our chairman of our Historic District Commission.
Mike, I just want to reiterate what we talked about. As you present to the public each of the districts, you hear from the public, you hear from the council, and at the end of the series, then you're going to come back with a revised proposal for the council. So we had the Ocean Road, had comment from the public, the council commented, and we're going to go back to the commission and say, here are some of the issues, and then at the end of the series, we will be looking at each district again with the new revisions based on the public's comments as well as the council.
Are you expecting that on November 6th?
No, I'm not. I'm just expecting
Thank you.
so that everybody knows
Okay,
the
got it.
input is valued and that we're looking and listening to what they're saying, and then we'll go back and then we'll make those revisions if we agree to them, if the council does.
And Susan, just, I told Mike I wanted to stay involved, not only for these hearings, but then when they go back to any workshops to amend any districts before the council votes one way or the other, to try to have some consistency throughout the entire process.
Thank you, Steve.
Excuse me, Jim, someone just texted me and the stream has ended for the live stream, and they were wondering if we're going to live stream the rest of the... It's back up? Okay, thanks.
Okay, Keith, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea to revise at the end. I mean, after all of the resounding support is heard, you may want to increase the district. Anyway, historic resources have been being lost in Narragansett for quite a while now, and we all know it's not what it used to be. And at some point, and all along the way, everyone says, well, we really should do something about that. And so many years ago, people started an effort to do that, those with the community's best interest in mind. And 6 years ago, the present council authorized a ordinance to that effect. So for the last 6 years, we've been setting up a historic district commission that is one of the most functional in the state. And so we've come up in the last couple of years with some districts that we think would be appropriate. And all along the way, this effort has been deemed an expansion. And I think it should be clarified that this is really an establishment of a historic district. We now have more of a pilot program, 125 properties out of over 11,000. That's not really a district town. So I think the pilot program has been proven, and so if we do go with this 3%, we will still have half proportionately as Providence, half proportionately as East Greenwich, 1/26th proportionately with Newport. So we would still have a very small percentage. I think we'll all admit that there's certainly more than 3% of the town is worth preserving. But it's a good place to start. So that's what we're trying to get accomplished here. So, there's no question that historic districts are good. And I don't have the time here now to explain it to you. So we've put a 150-page report on our website that you can look at just to see what an impact historic districts have on economy, aesthetics, and just the general quality and value of a neighborhood. Historic districts are good places for families to live. And that's really what it's all about, preserving the resources and having our good family neighborhoods, because, we have wonderful beaches, but we also have very passionate people and great seaside architecture as well as that create our town and make it what it is today. So we'll go to the districts here. As you can see, okay, the areas that are colored on here, these are the existing districts. And if we flip to the next slide, Mike. Is that it? Is that the proposed? Okay, so this would encompass all of the historic districts in Narragansett. So you see, it's a little less than 3% of the town. And as far as these districts go, you know, we've, for 2 years, staff and the commission itself has analyzed these properties, dated these properties, considered their densities to come up with these districts. Well vetted. But, you know, there are still those that will say, you know, Ocean Road's not a historic district. There's 9 new houses up and down that street. The Pier District's not historic. But, you know, anyone familiar and aware of the industry, it's pretty obvious. You know, these are historic districts. And anyone that would disagree, I think, is more concerned with their own self-interest rather than the community and those that they hire to represent those interests. So I think it's important that we consider the community good here as a whole and the vast majority of support we have throughout the community and the neighborhoods. Moving on to the district. So Earl's Court, currently historic district, we have 25 voluntary properties, and our, you know, our concern is that the voluntary properties really create more controversy than good. So we would consider any properties post-1950 to be what we would call non-contributing. Okay, so we would look at the application, but they would only follow several guidelines of our guidelines that we have. And I should mention that of the 76 guidelines we have, 100 of our applications have been approved 100% of the time. So the proposed district would make these properties regulated. We would add 47 properties along Gibson Avenue, South Pier Road, and portions of Walnut Street, Cedar Street, and Chestnut Street. The proposed district would also include the southern portion of Woodward Avenue, the Gibson Court condominiums, and Druid's Dream, along with the town property across the street from that. These are all very historically significant areas with a majority of properties that are pre-1950 with these concentrations. So what you see in the red line there is the existing district, and then the full yellow would be the proposed district. So here we've color-coded the dates and organized the dates of the properties. So all of the colors you see are pre-1950, with the lighter shades being actually 1800 to 1850. So again, majority being of historic value. We have 25 current properties. We would like to add 47, and that would make the total number 72. And that would be a 53% concentration. And I think we also have to consider the site of Earl's Court as well, with all its heritage of history and the water tower and the Sherry Cottage and the Sherry family. We have to consider the heritage value of the area itself, in addition to the properties. Okay, on to Boone Street. Again, a rich history with the railroads and the business in this area. This is a new proposed district located along Boone Street and South Pier Road. The proposed district would also include Perkins Avenue, Continental Avenue, and Rose Court, Continental Road, Narragansett Court, and portions of Congdon Street, Ocean Road, extending out to Ocean Road, and Rodman Street, and South Pier Road. So this is the proposed district here. Again, if we look at the concentrations on the next slide, we see that we have about a 71% of homes that are built prior to 1950. If we go back to the colors, Mike, we can see that there's the concentration. Again, a high density. Now, are there newer homes sprinkled in here and there? We can't move the homes around. We can only find the highest concentrations. So if we're interested in creating districts, if we want to save a small portion of Narragansett, if we think it's worth preserving just 3%, this is the way we look at it. We want to get those high concentrations so that the other 97% that is at free will we're keeping the more important areas that are have the highest concentrations. Again, 71% or prior to 1950 construction on Boone Street. And again, the heritage of the area with the railroad industry and the church on the Stone Church built in 1881, the rich history. Boone Street really has a vibe of its own. It's worth preserving. It has, it kind of, after 5 comes alive, people come out, there are a lot of walkers, a lot of people going to dinner, and the architecture facilitates that. It facilitates the form and the use and helps to complement that
I have a question.
era. Yes, sir.
So the outline is the proposed district.
Correct.
If the parcel is not colored, that just means it's after 1965.
Correct. Correct. We did that just to show the high concentration of older homes in that area, and that's obviously what we were looking to accomplish.
So Keith, I have a question.
Yep.
Boone Street being the new district and the 101 properties, I didn't realize there's some really old properties there. The houses in between that are not historic, any idea what's going to happen with those in that district?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, any properties that are less than 50 years old would be non-contributing, okay?
So they would
Right.
the rules wouldn't apply
Right.
to
The
them?
rules don't apply. It's a different set of rules, and basically, essentially just says as long as it's nothing detrimental to the historic properties around it. So they can do whatever they want to their building as far as their architectural treatments, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. And, I should note that...
Keith,
yes, sir.
It's a little bit later, and to piggyback on Susan's, the non-contributing
Right.
term.
Right.
Really I hadn't really come across that as much in the historic district conversations, and maybe it just didn't jump out at me before, and it seems like somewhere between. I'd like to, at some point in this whole conversation, have a longer conversation
Absolutely.
about that. Maybe not tonight.
Right,
I just
right,
want to put
right.
that in the bank.
Right.
That,
Yeah, I think it's
it was
come-
kind of new for me, but
I'm glad Matt mentioned that, because that's something I wanted to ask Steve at the last meeting, if he could expand on that for us.
And again, what I had envisioned is that they do their presentations on the 6 districts, because as I read through the entire historic district guidelines, I also had questions regarding I'll call it the level of control on a non-contributing structure. There's a lot of words. I know tonight we got into the words of shall and may and all that, but there's, as far as the control that the Historic District Commission has on a non-contributing structure, a lot of the wording in the current statute uses the word should on the non-contributing structure. So rather than trying to parcel that out now, what I thought was, because that's certainly a concern that the council has raised with me, and that I would like to sit down with both Michael and the commission to see exactly how non-contributing structures are currently, I'll call it regulated, if that's the correct term, or assessed. And when it comes back to the council, then certainly you guys will have a fuller understanding on what they're proposing to do on these non-contributing structures. If you remember, Mr. Landry on the last meeting essentially said that for an historic district commission to have jurisdiction over a structure, it had to be historic. So the question becomes on the non-contributing structures, what level of control does that commission have, or what level of control, more importantly, does the council want to give them? But at this point, I figured.
So we'll do that on wrap-up night,
Yeah,
Susan, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
we spoke about that last time, because that
Got it.
term came up last time as well.
We were agree with me. We didn't have that, Susan, a lot in the
No,
early
that's why
going.
yeah, so it came up, and I think that's
Right.
why we reiterated that we'll do the series, and then legally Steve will look and kind of add his
Right.
opinion to that, and then we'll come back with the revision, so.
Right. We were asked to keep the presentation to 10 minutes.
Yeah, 'cause that's-
Obviously, I can't express the importance of historic districts. I mean, you could drive down different towns in Bristol, East Greenwich, Newport, and just see, and as you get there, they proclaim this is a historic district. So very successful, very nice place to live for families. And that's really what it's all about. So I can't really explain
can I inter-
everything
can I
in
inter-
that 10 minutes.
Yeah, I have another question. So
Yeah.
and I apologize for not being here the last time you talked about this. So this is, I've seen this before. I'm supportive. Where are the rules around the districts?
Okay, so the 76 guidelines we have, we wrote 6 years ago. We got a grant for a consultant for $18,000. Richard Youngkin came in. And we sat down following Department of Interior standards, and then we modified it and gave it flexibility so that to conform to the needs and environmental conditions of Narragansett.
Where are they?
They're on our website.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah. So we have the 76 guidelines on the website. We have a 150-page report on the benefits of historic districting. We have a multi-slide that shows Narragansett then and now that the high school did, that shows all the properties we've lost, which is narrated by the late Ted Wright and John Miller, that describes the site. But in a nutshell, the difference between non-contributing and historic is that if it's a regulated property that's historic, if it has shingles, we want you to put shingles on it. If it has clapboard, we'd like you to clapboard it, okay? If it has 6-inch trim, we'd like to do 6-inch trim, along with the other things that indicate the architecture of that building, okay? And we've got a 20% tax credit. We pay for 20% of it, up to $50,000, $10,000 to offset, the additional costs from, the difference in wood shingles and vinyl siding. Non-contributing, you don't have to do any of that, okay? You just can't, we would frown on things like, let's say you're going to tear down a one-family home and maybe put in a 10-unit apartment house, or a carnival with a Ferris wheel. Things that would be detrimental to the surrounding historic properties around it, because as you see, these districts are predominantly, and the majority are historic houses. So if you have a new house with glass and plastic and different things of that nature, contemporary materials, that's fine. And if you want to put shingles, you put shingles. If you want to put more plastic, you put more plastic. They are not regulated to that degree. That's the difference between contributing and non-contributing.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear from the public. Yes.
You got 3 minutes.
My name is Francis Burke. I live at 8 Garden Court.
Excuse me.
I don't know what to do with that.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name and address.
Francis C. Burke.
Thank you.
Garden Court, Narragansett. Again, thank you to the council for allowing me to speak. My name is Francis Burke. Can you hear me okay? I'm the actual president of the Association of Gibson Court Condominiums, although I speak for myself and a few of my neighbors. Our board has not had a chance to meet to discuss this, and that these certified mails got mailed all over, and there was a lot of confusion about some we were in, some we were out, because we are contiguous to Boone Street as well. Of the 16 people I spoke to, they were 100% opposed to this. They like the voluntary involvement. I would say that the biggest reason for their opposition is that they object to this mandate of a third party telling us what we have to do and pay for with our money for our property. Most of the property on Gibson Court was built after 1990. And although it sounds as if this idea of, well, we may frown upon or not like, but the reality of it is, if it's within the mandated historic district, a lot of that is really kind of up in the air, and it makes folks nervous. It is an elitist concept. Most of our owners, or many of them, I shouldn't say most, because I can't speak for everybody's financial situation, but as the president of the board, the most frequent concern I hear from people is the expense of living there. And they're concerned about their HOAs going up. They also are concerned about the fact that many of them are elderly people living on a fixed income. I'm 100% disabled Vietnam veteran. I do live on an income, a pension from the VA. And it is a concern to me that we're going to be priced out of living in this very beautiful area, which, by the way, we live there, we pay our taxes, we get, we don't have kids in school for the most part, grandkids, but for the most part, we're good neighbors. And we want to take care of that place. My board meets endlessly about ways to improve the property. However, only one of the buildings on our property was a residence before 1900. That building was in disrepair when it was turned in the 1990s into condominiums. Today, that building's been made into a condo property. However, the other 23 units are assessed to do repairs on that building just as we are on our own. So when you jack up the price of fixing some of that work that was done in the 1990s, which was probably not historically correct work, we're concerned that we're going to be handed a blank check to a faceless committee who is full of good intentions. They want to bring it back to the Stone Age, and I'm all in favor of that. However, we can't do that. We are stuck paying the bill today. We have a limited budget. It's absolutely cruel to the people who live there. And like I said, of the 23 units within Gibson Court, really only one building, which was converted into 3 separate condominiums with an addition and with modifications, is the only building that really was historic. And this vague idea that maybe we're compliant, maybe we're not, is very concerning to all of us. And I would just ask you to consider the fact that, for the most part, the people that actually live there are totally opposed. And I can't speak for everyone. I don't say I do, because some of the people live out of town, and we haven't been able to reach them. And some of the people there may very well be in favor of it. I can't say I've spoken to 100% of them. But thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Richard.
I had a quick question for Keith. As the neighborhood gets older, do they get roped into the district? Okay, so once you're
Prior to 1950,
period.
not a moving gate.
Okay. Come on.
Yeah, my name is Richard Vangermersh, and I live on
He's going to swear you in, Richard.
Osceola Avenue.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Last time I gave a brief discussion about Ocean Road. I'm posing as Narragansett's historian, which is easy because there isn't much competition. But I did notice, tell you about 2 extremely famous figures that lived on Ocean Road, Irving Fisher and Ogden Mills. I had the, I guess, well, historians call it a thrill, of working with the Joseph Peace Hazard daybook from 1828 to 1891. One book that told the story of Earl's Court, Druid's Dream, and quite a fascinating book. I did a 68-page companion guide to it in handwritten form. Cursive is the word that is used today. But it is fantastic to see the history there, and it is recorded in his records. And this is available to you at the Peacedale Library, and much of it, I think, is online, and Jessica Wilson.
Peacedale Library. What about our library? We don't have it in there? After all that, we don't have
It's
it
on it's online. It has been put online, and Peacedale, this is where Narragansett was during most of the time Joseph Peace Hazard lived, and that's where his daybook is. I can't fight that. I didn't want to steal it. But when you read that, you have to be totally impressed with the history of this area. It is absolutely spectacular, and it's recorded in this rather spectacular manner by Joseph Peace Hazard, the person who put the Hazard Castle together, Druid's Dream, Hazard Tower, and assorted other stonework, Kendall Green. Now, you might question his sanity, but it's there, and it is quite spectacular. And the book details the negotiations about Earl's Court. It also describes his monument that he put on Kendall Green that someone has removed, a 12-foot monument removed, and I've got Sherlock Holmes working on it. So believe me, we have history here. We just have not effectively utilized it like we should. And I will say, if we were to have Doris Duke here in 1947, living in these mansions we have here, Narragansett would be one of the show places of the world. We still have many show places left, and we've really got to work to save them and to publicize them. So if you really want to see interesting history, go to the Peacedale Library. It's all done for you. I myself and the Narragansett Historical Society and the Middlebridge School got together and actually published this book. And you can read it, and it's kind of hard to refute that this isn't great history.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Come on. Sir. You're next.
Sir,
David Winter, Boone Street.
do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Something occurred to me just now. When they talk about this 3% number, they're looking at all the town, but all of this is occurring right here in the pier, and that's a greater number than 3%. I don't see anything in Point Judith. I don't see anything in Bonnet Shores. So that 3% of the number of structures in town is a little offsetting. Okay, first of all, we need a definition of Boone Street. The first one, which is at least used, is the long road that runs from Kingstown Road up to South Pier Road. The other one is that section from Continental Street, from Congdon Street to Rodman Street. It's as much a state of mind as a physical place. And if Narragansett downtown is the face of Narragansett, Boone Street's the heart. It's very vibrant, very evolving. We look at Popper's on the corner of Rodman Street. There's now a yoga shop. We look at the duck pin bowling alley that's become that complex over there. We look at a dilapidated laundromat that stole your money to a brand new, delightful laundromat that's been a great boost to the community. And of course, we've gone from Terminazes to Terms to the Quarter to PJ's. This is a place that's constantly evolving and changing. And the one mission of the Historical Society is in complete contrast to that. Its role seems to be to fossilize the town, to keep everything static and everything the same so that we can gaze and wonder at the architect of these old buildings and stuff like that. The last thing in the world we need on Boone Street is anybody else getting involved. Boone Street needs to be free. The more freedom Boone Street has, the better it is for the whole community. And speaking of being good for the community, there's a section of Leroy Thompson Park on the east side. That empty space would make a great parking lot, compensate for all the parking we're taking away every place else in town. It would provide foot traffic all through town to the benefit downtown. And if you pardon the expression, it would be a boon to Boone Street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name and address for the record.
Russ Stasta, 15 Fifth Avenue. I'm not actually in this historic district. I'm in the other districts. And I spoke last time you guys were here, and I'm very unhappy about being in this. But I went home and I thought about the things that they're trying to accomplish by doing this. And believe it or not, I agree with most of them. You know, my house, when I bought it, it's actually an old carriage house, although you would never know because when I bought it, it was all plastic. I made it look like it's old. But I didn't do it because somebody told me to. I did it because it made economic sense to do so. That's why I did it. And because it looks like the rest of the neighborhood. And I think it should stay that way. But there are things that can't be controlled that way. And that's where regulation comes in. Now, Keith mentioned putting up a Ferris wheel. Well, you don't have to worry about a Ferris wheel because that's covered by zoning. Can't do that. And you can't do a lot of other things that are also covered by building and zoning regulations already. A couple things that aren't, though, are things like tearing down a house and putting up condos, because in the zoning, it allows you to do that. So you need to be able to somehow offset that. So I'm kind of in an interesting position because I've been on both sides of this argument. I used to be a builder, used to be a developer. I'm an engineer. And it occurred to me that the town actually has, within its grasp, the ability to be able to already do that by allowing the zoning regulations to be bent. So right now, if you were to buy a piece of property actually on the corner of, that I looked at, South Pier and Boone Street, there's a old garage that went with the house that got turned into condos. If you bought that piece of property right now, you have to knock down the garage. Stone garage, very pretty, you have no choice. I looked at it, I wanted to buy it, couldn't keep the garage because it doesn't meet zoning requirements. Doesn't have the right setbacks. And when they split the lot, that's the way it happened. And there is no flexibility in the rules about that without going through the entire zoning process. So my suggestion is, is that you not do it this way, but you look at a more comprehensive way that goes about and says, let's look at this property. Well, let's take the one on Boone Street, for instance, the Presbyterian Church. If I were to look at it as a developer, I walk in and say, well, this stone building is condemnable, right? It's the best of all worlds, really. Because when it's condemnable, I get to keep the footprint, which doesn't meet setbacks, and I get to use that to my advantage to get more space and more units. Well, if the town were able to bend the rules and say, all right, we'll give you a density, we'll give you freedom on your density so you can fit 4 instead of 3, then, but you have to rehabilitate the structure and go with those rules, then if I'm the developer, I'm going to do it. But if you force me to do it, nobody's going to touch that property until that thing falls down, right? Until that tower falls, it's just going to happen. So I would beg you not to do this. This is the wrong way of doing it. It's elitist. It puts rules on people that change, and no matter what they say, in 50 years, at 1950, if there's a house that's 1951, it's going to get moved in. If there's one that's 52, that one's going to get moved in. It's just going to keep going.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Very nice.
My name is Ann Scavone. I live at 12 Perkins Avenue, Narragansett.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay.
Thank you.
Quite a proposal we have here. Hats off, it's going from about half, it's clearly doubling the amount of home space. So I
I
got
can't
my
hear you.
letter.
Can you pull the mic up?
I got my letter, my first letter, and they said I'm on the Boone Street project. Then I get a hand-delivered letter I have to sign for, and it says I'm not on the Boone Street project. So whoever sent out those letters were off to a bad start.
Sorry about that.
All right, I am on the project, it's right up there. I got online, I thought I'll do my due diligence. What kind of funding does this committee have? None. What kind of tax incentives are they going to give me for following all those rules? None.
They do have a tax incentive. I'll have him go over that.
Most people's property is one of their greatest assets. You have a committee. I would have to see their qualifications, but you have a committee that can tell this homeowner what to do and what not to do. You're going to get a lot of pushback when that happens. We just renovated a lot of our house, so I think I think I've passed the test. But still, this is something for Narragansett. If you're going to scoff up, one other thing, scoff up all this property and have them follow rules, I like people to have some skin in the game. It shouldn't be just the homeowner. There should be something, some kind of incentive you can give these homeowners that make it worth their while to follow all of these instructions. The first thing that you put up was Earl Court area, and it said 47 voluntary properties. Is this a voluntary thing?
Today, yes.
It is, 100% voluntary.
In Earl's Court, yes.
So, even though my house is on that map, I can say I don't feel like doing this.
Yeah, I mean, we're taking comments tonight. Again, we're going to look at the
Okay.
proposed districts and maybe edit some of what we've seen, but we're just, right now, just taking comments from the public where they live in the districts. If they're for it, against it, why, if they want to be involved or not. And we're just kind of getting all that information.
Okay, so that's, that's what I did. I got online, I read all the rules and regulations, I got through 28 pages, and there were still others, I haven't gotten to those. And these questions came to my mind. So
And
there
you-
might be something for Narragansett to consider.
Thank you.
Because, it is a beautiful town, and we'd like to keep it beautiful.
Thank you. And just so you know, there is an incentive, the tax incentive. I should have probably, Keith, had you talk about that at the beginning.
The 10,000.
But in her neighborhood, 25 are in the district now, and the proposal is to add 47.
47,
To
yeah.
increase it to 72, to answer her question. I think she heard that.
If you're in the historic district, all of the exterior work that you do, up to $50,000, and we capped it at 50 because it's intended for those of lesser means, you will get 20% off your property tax. You just fill out an application and you get $10,000 off your property tax over a 5-year period. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Also, I should mention that this is, the value is increased perpetually, so it actually adds to the tax base over time, so that no one's funding this except for the people that do the improvements. They're just getting a one-time break, that's all.
Thanks, Keith. Anybody else wishing to speak? We're gonna, yeah, you can't speak out. She's coming up to the podium. Okay, we have a woman up at the podium.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi,
Would you please raise your right hand? Would you state your name and address for the record?
Sally Rotenberg for the owners of 20 Walnut Street.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
Thank you.
I first received a letter saying that I lived close to the expanded Earls Court district. I said, or Oceans Road district. I said, that's great. All those homes are generally older. And then I just received a certified letter saying that somebody had decided to round something out and include our block into this historic district. I find it very interesting that all these blocks of time, I know it's late, we're all tired. They're all 50-year blocks of time because that's a convenient thing for a historic district to do. It so happens my family owns, I think it was built in 1950. Might have come online in I think it's like dated right at that edge. It is a simple 3-bedroom, 1-bath cottage that was built for a beach owner. This is not a historic building. It is on a double lot. So my understanding of this is you very well-meaning people are essentially really taking a lot of money out of my family's business. And there's a lot of little beach cottages in this area that you've just designated historic. Because we're on a double lot, my understanding is, and I did read your website, no one would ever be able to tear down this little nothing cottage and use the whole land to create a house that would add to the tax base of Narragansett. Many neighbors in the area have done just that. So all the little beach cottages that were there 40 years ago aren't there anymore. I understand it, but I don't see where this particular house is a historic structure.
Did you say it was 13 Walnut?
20 Walnut.
20.
There are houses. I was taking pictures of them. I'm glad to show them to the people here. I don't understand how this area suddenly became historic. And the block next to us, I can understand, maybe historic. This isn't historic. And there's a area, I think it's like a pre-built house. It was like a, I don't know, like a pre-formed house. That's in the historic district because somebody wanted to make nice boundaries for historic district. Voluntary I can understand, but making this mandatory on people who live there is just crazy. Forgive me, but I don't understand it. And I really want, and I want to know why those 50-year periods were chosen. If there was a historic reason, there was a building area then, but this is just like somebody's convenience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
Please state your name and address.
Patricia Loman, Rose Court.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Keith, would this have affected the Gemma project had we gone with the historic? Like on Rodman Street, they took down that old, they took down that old boarding house and put up condos.
Like I mentioned, as contributing properties, we've seen what that's done to the neighbors' values and wholesaling.
Well, I see that a lot in my neighborhood. I started 30 years ago. I'm against it. I have a small house, 1910.
No,
I don't.
We support all those type of apartment houses or in 97% of the town. But we'd like to see one small part of the town remain historic.
Right, but from where I sit, I've seen so much change, and there's only a few of us left on Rose Court, and I'd like to be exempt to do what I want to do. So that's just my concern there, too.
Thank you. Mr. Latimer, did you want to speak? Did you
Please
say
state
that-
your name and
sorry.
address for the record.
Richard Latimer, 59 Gibson Avenue.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing
I
but the
do.
truth? Thank you.
My wife said I needed to come up and do this. We moved to Narragansett 1976 and had no idea what we were moving into. We've lived in 11 or 12 states around the country. We moved down from the state of Alaska. We lived up and down the West Coast, in the Middle East, middle part of the country, and as far east as New York. Had no idea what we were moving into. We found a cottage on Cantera Green without really understanding the history or what was there. We purchased that home and moved in. And that began the love affair we have with Narragansett. I loved the land. I'm an environmental scientist, and this remarkable stretch of land, some 22 miles long, bordered by a beautiful marine, clean marine environment, wonderful, healthy estuaries, streams and ponds and rivers. I fell in love with the land. My wife fell in love with the history when she found out we lived in a Lewis Sherry cottage. And and we both fell in love with the people here. So that's been 40 years of our love life. And I understand perfectly well the feelings of people that stand here and say, a historic district is going to hurt me financially. It's going to take away my freedom. And I don't, and I understand their feeling, but that is certainly not the intent of the historic district. And I want to say in front of them and you all, I have 100% confidence in the judgment and the work of this historic district commission. It's going to cost us some money and some problems because we live in a historic home. But that's not the question I ask myself. The question I ask, is this good for the town of Narragansett? It may cost me some more money. It may make it more uncomfortable in some decisions we make. But is it good for the town of Narragansett? I know with all my heart this is good for the town of Narragansett. And I hope the council feels that way about it. My dear wife authored 2 books on the history of Narragansett. This is the first one back in 1990. Okay. I think it's probably out of print now, but it's wonderful. If you have not read it, this is a free copy for the town council, and I'll leave it right here. Let me just say again, I know the work of Keith and Mike and many members of the historic district. These are wonderful, selfless people, devote a lot of their time and effort for their love of the town of Narragansett. And I share it with them, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe you could, Mr. Latimer, if you want to hand the clerk the book, we'll take the book and we'll all take a turn looking at it. I have that book too, I think. Anybody else wishing to speak? Come on up. And if, after this speaker, we'll have to vote to extend the meeting a bit. Oh, she was just coming up. Okay.
Please state your name and address.
Suzanne Marchand, 7 Continental Road.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm opposed to this project.
Can you just speak in?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I'm opposed to the project. I feel like it takes away my property rights. And I believe that the intention is good here. I live in front of the Rodman Street condos, and believe me, I believe it is an atrocity in its design, and it just doesn't belong where it is. However, I just feel much more strongly that you're taking away my rights as a property owner. I know Mike lives in the historic district. I don't know how many other of you do, but if you stop and really think about somebody taking your property rights away from you and putting them in the hands of a stranger. And again, like, I know Mike DeLuca a little bit. I've gotten to know him in the last year. I have great respect for him, and I know his intentions are in the right place. But boards change, people change, their agendas change. They're subject to so many outside influences, as I've seen with the planning and the zoning board. I believe that they have done me harm with this project in back.
Close to the microphone so they can
I'm
hear you.
sorry.
Thanks.
I feel as if they've done me harm at times. So I'm very untrusting of putting my property rights in the hands, oh my goodness, sorry, in the hands of another board. And I also wonder about the value of my property. Will this affect the value of my property in that someone can go, if I put my property up for sale, someone can go to the other side of town and purchase a property that doesn't fall under these restrictions and doesn't have to deal with these restrictions, maybe that makes those properties more valuable at that point than mine. And I guess my thought is, maybe if we were to make our planning and our zoning boards more accountable to instead of overturning our zoning ordinances left and right like they tend to do, maybe that would minimize the need for something like this and for the need to take away our rights as property owners. I feel as if they need more accountability, and that might help us greatly here. Instead of taking away the rights of property owners. I live in a historic district, and my house was built in 1935, but it's not a historic home. It's a 1,000-foot home on a tiny little lot, and it's not a historic home. And I don't think I should live under these restrictions.
Thank you. It's almost 10 of, so.
Yeah, I move we extend the meeting past 11 o'clock.
Let's say another half hour. Maybe make a motion for
30 minutes.
Do I have a
Motion for 30
second?
minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Okay.
Well, I'm doing on Pat's last call after this one.
Okay, who would like to speak?
My name is Ray Catuno, and I live at 38 South Pier Road. And if I could get the other diagram up there, that would be
Sir,
great.
excuse me. Would you mind raising your right hand?
Not at all. I'm a court reporter, and I'm really fascinated by the fact that you're going to swear people in to testify here today.
Public hearing.
Go ahead.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
A couple of things. Has anyone asked the people that live in this area?
That's what the public hearing is.
That's what this is about.
All right, but there's, I don't know how many properties there are, but however many there are, has anyone gotten a vote of the people that actually live in those 47 or so properties?
So again, that's why we're holding the public hearings. We notified the people, they're coming, they're sharing their input, and then, again, we'll look at the whole series of historic districts townwide and when we're at the conclusion. So we want to hear from you tonight, Ray, and what your feeling is on the historic districts, and particularly where you live.
And we're getting pretty clear feedback.
I live on South Pier Road, and about 400 feet of my 1,600-foot house actually falls within the numbers up here, and that's why I wanted to see with that, how they charted my house on there, 38. And I can't tell from the diagram which one it is.
We can extend it and cut you in there.
Can you?
I'm in, I think. I'm pretty sure I'm in. I'm just trying to find out how they classified my house and how they're going to classify other houses that are similar to mine. Because the original house that was built, I think was built in the 30s, and that's about 400 square feet.
Right.
The rest of the house, the other 1,200 feet, was built much later, and it doesn't fall within those number ranges. And that's why I'm interested in that.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
I do want to be clear.
36 South Pier.
I do want to be clear based on the question I asked before. It's not house by house. It's zone by zone, right?
Please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record.
Nancy Carroll, and it's 49 Allagash Trail.
Do you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
Thanks. I have friends who live in Boston. A couple of years ago, they went to Prague, and they talked about visiting me a couple of weeks before that, and driving around Narragansett. Well, they mentioned this to their friends in Prague. Narragansett, they said. And we were just there 2 years ago. Oh my God, is Earl's Court still there? Oh my God. He said, is the tower still there? Did they find the Griffin yet? I just want you to know that how you decide here tonight, I wasn't interested in homes, more of the historical buildings, the monuments. But But people know about Narragansett all over the world. And so what you decide here means something far beyond this little circle. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. We're just, again, taking input tonight. We're not making any decisions at the public hearing tonight. We're just taking in information. Meg?
I think we made enough decisions tonight for one night.
Hello.
Hello.
Please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record, please.
Margaret Rogers, 68 Earls Court.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd like to thank Keith, Mike, and the members of the Historic District Commission for their dedication, their hours of meticulous research, and especially for their passion to preserve our town's historic spaces. They have worked so hard to help us understand why this step is so crucial and so consequential to the life of our town. Some of my fellow citizens fear the creation of these districts, and I respect that and I understand it. They're afraid they're going to lose control to town bureaucracy. But historic preservation is nothing more than conserving our built environment. Historic district controls exist within the broader context of land use regulations that have been extensively reviewed and rigorously examined by the courts throughout the United States. It is a remarkable achievement that our HDC has worked with applicants and achieved a 100% rate of approval. While it is true that an additional step is needed, the benefits of protecting the rich architectural heritage found throughout Narragansett far outweigh this added step. Without your protection, the architectural gems that have lasted so long could be demolished or irreparably altered. I'm not kidding. This challenge is not something far off in the distance. Ominously, it is right before you. Presently, in the proposed Earls Court District, there are 2 properties of immense historic significance currently on the market. Druid's Dream, which was constructed out of quarried granite in 1884 for Joseph Peace Hazard, and the Tower House Bed and Breakfast, built in 1885. If and when you lose these buildings, and you could, you also lose the history that happened within those buildings. For example, the Tower House was an orphanage, if you will, for refugee children escaping from the bombings during the London Blitz in World War II. Also within the proposed Earls Court District are the 4 Sherry Cottages built in 1988 and the Hut, which was constructed in 1903. Now, even if a property is on the National Registry of Historic Places, they are not protected. Unless you protect them, these historic homes can be irreversibly altered or even torn down. The developers and their lawyers don't care. They make their money, they walk away, and more often than not, as we know so well, with them goes our history. And I may mention to you that Earls Court has changed immensely since my husband and I purchased our home in 2009. It is turning into a college dormitory center. Right next to the water court, we have children jumping off roofs during a rave. That is real and it is happening. So all these things are very interconnected. I hope
that many people in Narragansett, and I certainly do, feel the need to be a steward of our history. But you are elected officials, and it is your vote that will leave a mark on our town for better or for worse. Did you know that Preserve America, the national initiative working in cooperation with the Council on Historic Preservation, maintains a list of communities that are cited for historic preservation? Today, I checked the Rhode Island listing. 23 of our 39 cities and towns here in Rhode Island are so designated, including South Kingstown, Woonsocket, Central Falls, Providence, and Westerly. Narragansett was conspicuous by its absence. Hopefully we can change this if you decide to proceed, protect, and cover the 3% of the recommended properties. No structure and no house stands alone. Each building contributes in some way to what our town is, was, and will be for future generations. Once it's gone forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Nancy Richards,
You can take that
144.
right now. You can take it up. There you go.
144 Gibson Avenue.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I live on Gibson Avenue on number 144. As a matter of fact, it's Druid's Dream. My house is on the National Register, and there's a great deal of misconception about that. Every time I meet someone new and they discover that my house is on the National Register, their first assumption is that I can't do anything to it. Oh my God, it must be awful. You can't make any changes. You know, what about this? What about that? And it's totally untrue. And just as this proposal would benefit the whole area immensely, all of the things I'm hearing sound so unrealistic. Non-contributing properties do not face the same requirements as historic properties, and I think most of the people in historic properties are going to be more than willing to do what's necessary to keep them in the condition that's appropriate, especially if there's some funding available. So I'm definitely for this. I was very upset when my house was not included in the first round, and I'm very pleased that it is in this round. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Sally?
Oh,
I'm
ma'am.
Sally Latimer.
Would you please raise your right hand?
Right here.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Correct,
And
yes.
please state your full name and address for the record.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sally Latimer, 59 Gibson Avenue, on Cantera Green.
Sally, if you want to take that off, it might be easier for you. I don't know. There you go.
I don't enjoy speaking, but I'm here to, I come in peace and not.
Wish you were here earlier.
Sorry. And praise. I thought about this tonight earlier, and I said, no, I'm not going to speak because I'm not good at speaking. But I appreciate what you do, the sacrifices that you make of your time. And I was thinking about the Historic District Commission. They have done the same thing, and they're probably most of the people in this audience, if they've lived here long enough, they've been on committees and so on. And it's a chore. It's a chore. But when we moved here, the now historic properties were called white elephants. No one wanted them. And it's been over a period of time that this has taken place. People who have moved here have loved the homes and have put a lot of money into these historic homes. But that's not what I wanted to say, really. Most people don't remember, but the property that's across the street to the north of the towers, it's by the post office. One time, Mrs. Ewing got a phone call from someone saying, there's a deal going on, there's going to be a service station there, and it's in the process. She was about to leave to go back to her home, and she called all of her friends. They put together a package that would purchase this piece of property. That piece of property was turned over to the town, given to the town, that nothing would ever be built on that piece of property, a permanent piece of property. It would always stay green. That's where the new casino was at one time. Anyway, I've lived here long enough to go through a lot of town managers, and one was Maury Luchins, and there was a back and forth debate about the Towers. The Towers Casino originally was called, and he proclaimed, okay, let's just pour cement into it and be done with it. And he wasn't joking. And within a year or two, the committee that sat on that board of the Towers, what to do with it, it was it was considered a white elephant also. The committee decided that they would let the Block Island Corporation, I don't know who they were, purchase the Towers and put a motel, make it a motel, and the green there would also be motel units. I was called in the middle of the night of one person who voted against that, and Jerry Goldstein, who was on the Providence Journal, came in the next day and wrote a story about it, and that was the end of that. But if that person had not spoken up and defended that, we would have a motel in the Towers today. There's so many of the different properties around here that people don't realize the significance of them or what they've gone through to be saved. It's so important to recognize. Oh, the last thing I'd like to say is Dr. O'Neill came to my husband and I about 5 or 6 years ago and said, Sally, do you know that your property, I'm on Cantera Green, it's on the National Register, and he said, your property is large enough, we're sitting on 1 acre of property, but you could build a swimming pool right in the middle of your property. You're not, well, he warned us we should cover ourselves. We didn't know how. Sure enough, we fought our neighbor. He wanted to build a man cave on his property, which was one of the, was at one time a Lewis Sherry cottage. And got a good lawyer, and he now has this big 3 or 4 bay garage, 2 stories. It's as big as his house. Now he wants to divide the property so he can do whatever he wants to with it. Now we're on the National Register, but it took a lawyer to just defeat what we've been trying to do, is to keep our Gibson Avenue area the way that it should be kept It's a very special piece of property. That's all.
Thank you, Sally. Anybody else wishing to speak? You're next.
Hello. Please state your name and address for the record.
Moira Hensa, 51 Gibson Avenue.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak in favor of the HDC expansion across the board. I think that the two things that draw people to Narragansett, or the two biggest things, are the beach and the historic character of our New England seaside town. I'd like to focus on the Earls Court Historic District right now, which includes part of Gibson Avenue. This is right now a voluntary district, which is essentially meaningless. There are no protections conferred by being a voluntary district. It gives us access to the Historic District Commission, but pretty much anyone in town who'd like to come ask the Historic District Commission a question can do that. So what we have right now is recognition, but not protection. Our house is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it was recognized by the Rhode Island Historic Preservation Commission. Again, recognition, but neither of those things provide any protection. I think it's a little bit ironic that presumably this area would be most important to the town in which it's in rather than the state or the country, but the town has not seen fit to make it a protected area. Some of the structures included in this area are Druid's Dream, as you've heard, the Sherry Cottages, Tower House, Garden Court, 41 Gibson. These are houses that were built by some of America's foremost architects, including Stanford White, and reflect Narragansett history from Joseph Peace Hazard, Kenneth Murchison, who built the original Dunes Club, and the Randolph family, which gave the land for the Point Judith Country Club. The ordinance recognizing the Historic District Commission establishment states that the purpose of the ordinance is to safeguard the heritage of the town by preserving districts and structures which reflect elements of the town's cultural, social, economic, political, and architectural history. Preservation is identified as a public purpose. Right now, there are no safeguards for our neighborhood. I hope you'll ask yourselves if you're inclined to question the wisdom of expanding the historic districts, as many people have stated tonight. How would you feel if all the Sherry Cottages, Druid's Dream, the Tower House were all demolished? Because right now, there's nothing preventing that. I think that you can agree that that would be detrimental to our town if that were to happen. I believe that the expansion of the historic districts is supported by the purpose stated in the ordinance, and I hope that the council agrees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening.
Good
Kyle
evening.
Sahanowitz, Wheatfield Cove, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I think everybody here loves old houses. Who doesn't? They're beautiful.
Kyle, come to the front of that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. Everybody here loves old houses. I think it's safe to say they're beautiful. I own historic property. I'm here. I own 5 Continental Street in Narragansett. It's an 18-unit apartment building. It's pretty much got the least historic value of anything, I would say, in Narragansett. It's got faux brick and vinyl siding. I'm a developer by trade, and I'm concerned about the suggestions and implications of being a voluntary non-participator, or whatever language is being used and circulated around that. I don't think my particular building and buildings like mine contribute to the historic nature of the pier in general. I'm concerned about my development opportunities going forward, which was priced into the value that I placed on that building when I purchased it several years ago. I'm concerned that, you know, they've implied that perhaps putting up some sort of windmill or, you know, maybe some sort of roller coaster may not be acceptable, but they still imply that they could have the ability to dictate certain constraints in and around the development and appreciation of my property. I think voluntary contributors or non-contributors should be able to opt out of the project and of the area entirely. I actually question the validity of some of these maps. If you look at the Boone Street area, my building was built in 1972, and it's showing that it was built, I think, in 1800. So I question, you know, whether or not it was most likely just a general error. But I'm not interested in contributing. I can't speak for others. Boone Street is a very vibrant, young, and up-and-coming and changing area. The people that live there, the people that lived in the building that occupied the property at the time when I purchased it are very different than the people that are there now. They've done a great job improving the area. People love to live there. They walk downtown. They shop at the shops. They like that. That's the vibrant nature that we're trying to keep there. So if you've got an old property and you'd like to volunteer to keep it a certain way, I welcome it. I love old property. I buy tons of it. But as far as my older buildings that don't quite meet that criteria, I think we should be voluntarily left out of it. So,
Thank you, Kyle.
thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak? At this time, oh, sorry, come on up. I almost was ready
As he's
to.
coming up, how many on Boone Street do we have now, and how many are being added? Just so I have that.
It's new, a completely new district.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's completely new. Okay. Right.
All set?
Yeah, you have to
All
be
right.
sworn in and then.
Yeah.
Sir.
Stephen Mello, 11 Continental Street.
Please raise your right hand.
Yep.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so does the town need a historical district? Absolutely. Should it be made with a paintbrush? Absolutely not. And that's exactly what's going on. I got an old house, needs a lot of work. I'm actually next to him. So his apartment building kind of overshadows the house, and the people there are pretty cool. So that's good. But when I stand on my front steps and look out, I get to see a dumpster because I'm behind the, what the heck is it? Well, Boone Street, that whole section. So that's what I see. What's historical about that? Nothing. So I don't understand why I got to be in with all this. It doesn't make any sense when I look at it. So the other part is, you say, I did read everything on the website and all the numbers and the pretty little bar graphs and everything. And that's cool, you did a great job, fantastic. However, you're talking about business districts. You're not talking about neighborhoods. Bring people into a business district, yes, downtown and everything else. You can drive through my neighborhood and say, ooh, look at that house. That's a historical residence. That's what we're talking about here. We do need a historical district, but it should not be made up of residential houses that are in the background in neighborhoods. I just can't stand the idea that you're going to dictate how and what I'm going to do with the property. You guys, you know, all the zoning rules are there, the zoning laws are there, we got to follow them. Codes there from the state and the town, we got to follow them. So for you to come in and say, like, I need vinyl siding, so you can't put that on, you're going to have to do it like this, and you're going to have to do that, and you can dangle all the little carrots in front of me all you want. The bottom line is, I want that blue siding there because I like it, I pay taxes, and I should be able to do whatever I want with my property, providing it's not intruding on anybody else. And that's all I got to say on that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak? Do I have a motion to close the public? One more. Oh, right here, sorry.
I am the last person. Karen Tuno, 38 South Pier Road. I will affirm to tell the truth.
Let me just give you the oath, just to be formal. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will affirm, I don't swear.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Karen, take the microphone, please. Thank you.
Let's see here. Can you hear me? Yes?
Appreciate it, Jill.
All right. So I understand that regulation is a fact of life. We all do. But I do believe that when we're talking about our homes, after we talk about our families, I think the thing that is most important to us is our homes. And when you're talking about regulating the use of an individual's home, the city council should tread very lightly and very wisely, because the regulations that are in the proposed historic district is adding a layer of bureaucracy on homeowners that doesn't need to be here, and it is taking away control from us and placing it in the hands of a select group of people who may have their own ideas on how I should live in my home with my family. My house is not architecturally or historically significant, but it was built in 1910. And it will therefore become what's called a contributing structure, which will make my home subject to a whole layer of regulations and processes that I don't believe I should have to be subjected to. And I don't think anybody who has come here tonight has talked about the actual process of what will happen if the historic districts are expanded and if these regulations come into place. And that's what I want to talk about. So my little house, which was probably a barn in 1910, that we've made into a very cute home, but if you blinked and drove down my street, you wouldn't notice it, you wouldn't remark about it, but it is our home. If I want to do something to my home, I now have to go through a whole layer of bureaucracy that other individuals in this town do not have to do. And I'm going outside of these proposed districts. I am going to have to probably hire an architect. I am going to have to submit certain levels of plans. I'm going to have to do designs. I am going to have to provide the Historic Commission with the materials that I'm going to use. The regulations that are on the books right now in Narragansett even talk about the textures that I am going to be using on my property. It tells me that I can't even take out plantings unless I go in front of the Historic Commission. Now, I want to contrast that with the house that is right next door to mine, because the house right next door to mine is a raised ranch that was probably built in 1979 or 1980. All of the review that I am going to be subject to will not happen if my neighbor goes and wants to build a porch on their house. So if I want to build a porch on my house, I have to go through all of these layers of review. If my neighbor wants to build a porch on their house, none of these factors are going to be looked at. I have to file, after I pay for the architect, after I pay for the plans, after I file my application, if they deem it incomplete, they can bump it back. Now we're talking time on top of money. They then have 45 days under the current regulations to decide whether it's appropriate what I choose to do, but they can unilaterally decide if they want to extend that to 90 days. So now I'm talking about time, I'm talking about money, and I'm talking about more time. And then there'll be a public hearing. And if my neighbor decides that they don't want me to have a front porch because they don't like the fact that I sit out there at 10 o'clock at night, nothing to do with architecture, nothing to do with historic preservation, they can come in and they can speak against it. Now, they may reject that testimony and say that has nothing to do with the historic character, but the regulations as written will then allow my neighbor to go to court. They will be able to file an appeal and raise their ridiculous, frivolous reason for me not having my porch. That's going to be more time. After that, if they are dismissed from Superior Court, they can then appeal again. So now we're possibly talking about years, and all I want to do is build my front porch. This is what you're imposing on the people who are living in this district. There's no rational reason for it. There's no rational reason for it, especially as it relates to my house. And there's no rational reason why my neighbor gets a buy and I'm going to be subject to all of these regulations. So before you decide in favor, I think, of this type of disparate treatment of certain people who live in this town, you really should think about how it affects our ability to live in our homes, how we view, our place in the community. I think this town, as is a pretty darn good, perfect place to live. And I'm not sure that I need someone, 7 people that I don't know, that could change next year, whose ideas could change, should be telling me how I should live in my home.
Thank you. Anybody else before we close the public hearing? Seeing no other hands up, at this point, do I?
Just a reminder, Madam President, that the staff requests that you continue the hearing as you did the October 2nd hearing.
Correct.
And
All right,
then on
so a
November
motion to
6th, we'll
continue.
open a separate hearing.
Thank you.
And
I
at some
was-
point after that, we'll close them
Then
all.
we'll close it. So a motion to continue.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor of continuing?
Aye.
Aye.
5 to, did you say yes?
Yes.
No, 5 to 0, motion passes. Thank you very much for your input.
Did you say the 6th?
Yes.
Thank you.
6, right? Okay, so,
At 8?
8 o'clock. The last thing on the agenda tonight for the council is public hearing to renew the alcoholic beverage licenses for the license period of December 1st, 2007 to November 30th, 2018. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing on that?
Move it.
Okay,
Second.
we're open. All those in favor of aye?
Aye.
Mike? Okay, we're going to try to finish up some business. Thank you. Go ahead.
I move to renew the 4 Class A alcohol beverage licenses, subject to compliance with local and state regulations.
Do I have a second for that?
Second.
So I'm just going to read the 4 Class A. That's Bonnet Spirits, O'Neill's Package Store, Pier Liquors and Swabbies.
I move to renew the 6 Class B limited alcohol beverage licenses, subject,
Oh, we have to vote.
Patrick,
Yeah.
seconded.
Yep. And then we all have to agree to the Class A. All those in favor of the Class A?
Aye.
Aye.
5 to 0, motion passes. Okay, the next one?
I move to renew the 6 Class B limited alcohol beverage licenses, subject to compliance with local and state regulations.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
James Leon, Aunt Carrie's, JB Coffee Company, Julio's LLC, Casey's Montanari. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There was I couldn't hear you, Susan. I know there was one that the solicitor said that
We haven't gotten to
We
it
haven't
yet.
Okay,
gotten to
thank
it.
you,
I
guys.
move to
Okay.
renew the 4 Class B tavern alcohol beverage licenses, subject to compliance with local and state regulations.
Second.
And it's Narragansett Recreation LLC. All right, and then the IMP Beverage Service, the Break LLC, and, and PRI X Beverage Services. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor of renewing those licenses?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5 to 0.
I move to renew the 22 Class B victualling alcohol beverage licenses, subject to compliance with local and state regulations.
Do I have a second for
Second.
that? That's Diamond Arturo, Hammerhead Grill, PM Cake Peg,
Oh, wait a minute.
Katerina's Italian.
So can I except for mainland Narragansett,
Yes,
Rhode Island?
I'll skip that one, okay.
Yep.
Champlain Seafood Deck. Where am I on that? Oh, so that's the, where am I going on the
Sand Hill
next to the list?
Associates.
After Champlain Seafood.
Next page, Sand Hill Associates.
Oh, Sand Hill, oh, it's in black, sorry. Sand Hill Associates, South Winds Court, George's Galilee, Mainland Narragansett, Marina Grill, New Dragon, Sags Enterprise, Pelly's Properties, Portside Restaurant, Spain of Narragansett, TRG and Whale Rock Restaurant, Trio LLC, Twin Willows, Wheelhouse LLC.
Madam President, you need to exclude mainland.
Yes, excluding that one. Do I have, we have a second on that?
Why are we excluding mainland?
Because it's closed, right?
Second.
All those in favor of the 22?
Aye.
21.
Aye.
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 Motion passes, and the last one is a Class D.
I move to renew 6 Class D alcohol beverage licenses subject to compliance with local and state regulations.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Bonnet Shores, Dunes Corporation, GBC Associates, Medituxet Improvement Association, Pettisquamsket Lake Shores, Point Judith Country Club. All those in favor of all 6?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Do I have is that it? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That
Welcome,
concludes the
Mark.
meeting.